you now.
Kenmore City Council is now in session. We are going to, will the clerk please take the roll?
Yes, I will. Councilmember File.
Present.
Councilmember Marshall.
Present.
Councilmember Kugler.
Here.
Councilmember Srebnick.
Here.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane.
Present.
Mayor Herbig.
Here.
Councilmember Baker was present, but for the time, would you like to excuse him? I think he went to the executive session prematurely.
Yes, let's excuse Councilmember Baker.
Okay.
And with that, we are going to adjourn into executive session pursuant to RCW 42.30.110.1 subsection B. The City Council entered an executive session to consider real estate acquisition. The session is expected to last approximately 30 minutes. I will see you all over there.
Thank you. City Clerk, could you resend that executive session link? Thank you.
Yes, stand by. Councilmember Srebnick, I issued the link one more time, sent it your direction too.
Yeah, I've been trying to get in for the last 3 minutes. So, I mean, I don't know what's going on.
Okay,
So,
let me see if
yeah,
Rob can
I'll
invite
leave
you.
this and
Okay. Okay, and it looks like we still have a full house with us. Thank you for staying with us. The council did just adjourn or recess into an executive session to discuss real estate acquisition. And they expect to be there for 30 minutes, at which point they will likely adjourn that meeting and move right into the regular meeting at 7 p.m. And if you're one of our residents, I do get this question a lot, so I'd like to answer it now. Sometimes I get the question of what makes a special meeting so special anyway, because you see regular and special meetings being publicized. And it's not what you think. The content of the meeting isn't what makes it special. It's not like there's something super unique we're discussing. The council can only meet in either a regular or a special meeting. All regular meetings are those that have been codified or formally recognized as the council's meeting schedule. So for our council, that means that they meet on the second, the third, and the fourth Monday of every month, unless the Monday falls on a holiday. So anything outside of that schedule, either by date or by time, becomes a special meeting. So today we're starting at 6:30 instead of 7. And that makes it special. If we were to do a meeting on a Wednesday instead of the second, the third, or the fourth Monday, that would also be a special meeting. Welcome back, Mayor. Welcome back, Deputy Mayor.
Zoom is taking longer than normal to log people in and out, it appears, so.
Here comes Councilmember Kugler.
Okay, are we recording?
Yes, we are.
Okay. The Kenmore City Council, we're coming back out of executive session, and the chair will entertain a motion to approve the letter of intent dated January 18th, 2022 for the purchase of the property located at 6215 Northeast Bothell Way, Kenmore, Washington 98028 for the sum of $650,000, including all buildings, fixtures, and improvements.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Will the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember File,
Yay.
Councilmember Kugler,
Yes.
Councilmember Srebnick,
Yes.
Councilmember Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane,
Yes.
Mayor Herbig.
No.
The motion passes.
Okay. I'm now calling the regular meeting to order. We will start off with the flag salute. Do we have a flag? There we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next up, we have the approval of the agenda. Unless I hear any objections, the agenda will stand approved. The agenda is approved. All right, next up, we have proclamations. We have a proclamation in honor of Black History Month. Whereas Black History Month is meant to recognize and pay tribute to the many contributions of Black and African Americans to the history, society, and culture of the United States of America, and whereas through bravery, perseverance, faith, and resolve, often in the face of prejudice and hardship, Black and African Americans have enhanced and advanced every aspect of American life. And whereas for over 2.5 centuries, Black and African Americans have struggled against the cruelties of slavery, discrimination in housing, the workplace, academic institutions, colleges, and universities, have faced disproportionately economic hardships and social inequalities. And whereas, despite extraordinary human trials, Black and African Americans have fiercely, lovingly, and courageously shaped American society and values through service, leadership, intellectual power, and the development of moral character in every walk of life, enterprise. And whereas this nation is strengthened and enriched by citizens of every race, religion, color, and creed, this February we celebrate the cultural heritage, diverse contributions, and unbreakable spirit of the Black and African Americans. And whereas Black History Month challenges us to learn from the deeds of people of national and local renown, as well as Black and African Americans in every walk of life who have contributed to their country and communities in ways that make them American heroes. And whereas Black History Month summons every member of our Kenmore community to strive to build on our togetherness and cultural awareness, celebrate our diversity and intersectionality, and to create a future that does not compromise any American's right to equality or access to the quest of knowledge, economic achievement, spiritual development, and cultural richness. Now, therefore, I, Nigel Herbig, Mayor of the City of Kenmore, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim February 2022 Black History Month in the City of Kenmore. The city makes this proclamation to celebrate the Black and African American community and as an affirmation of the city's commitment to protect and serve everyone who resides in, works in, or visits Kenmore without discrimination, and of its belief in the dignity, equality, and civil rights of all people. Not sure, we're not presenting that to anybody, are we, staff?
No.
Okay. Next up, we have presentations. We've got 3 of them today. First, we'll take a presentation on inclement weather and snow removal response, presented by Jennifer Gordon, Public Works Operations Manager. Ms.
Good
Gordon.
evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you so much. I'm just going to give a brief, real quick kind of report on our most recent snow and ice response. So let me share my presentation here. Stand by. Okay, can you see that okay? Are you able to see the presentation? Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yes, we can see it.
That's okay. So let's see. I was going to start off and talk a little bit about our resources. We operate with a 6-person crew, and that's our, our main full-time staff that works, Monday through Friday. So they are split into 2 shifts. We work 2 12-hour shifts around the clock. And so we have 3 people per shift. We also have the bonus of having a contract with the North Shore Utility District. And we also have a total of 6 people responding around the clock from North Shore Utility District. So we actually have a 6-person crew 24/7. In this most recent event, we worked 326 hours. That was our Kenmore crew staff, and that's just responding to snow and ice. That's not administrative time or any, office kind of work. It's just, those are hours just spent on responding to snow-related event. And then the North Shore Utility District spent 205 hours on helping us out with that response. I wanted to just touch on the kind of equipment that we have. We've got 1 large dump truck that has a 5-yard sander with a 10-foot plow on it. We've got 2 F350s that have a 2-yard sander and a 9-foot plow. And then additionally, we have the F550 flatbed with a 400-gallon de-icer spray tank. With North Shore Utility District, we actually own 2 plows that are attached to 2 North Shore Utility District trucks. And then North Shore Utility District also has their own truck with 1 plow. So that gives us 6 plows out on the road at any given time. We have their, when we have their support. Also, we have access to North Shore Utility District's full-size dump truck, which is really excellent because that gives us the ability to go get materials as needed without having to take our sander out of our dump truck or just only get our, sander loaded with sand or salt. So that is a definite bonus. For this recent response, we had a duration of about 5 days where we were working around the clock. Started on Sunday, the 26th, and through to Thursday, the 30th. We stopped having a full crew come out on Thursday evening, but we did get some call outs on that night. It was really cold, really icy. We were able to deploy some sand and salt that night. We didn't have anybody on staff for the 31st, the 1st, and the 2nd, simply because we had kind of gotten to a point where we've done everything we could. There was really no change in the weather, and we didn't have, we weren't making any positive change when we're out there. So we took that weekend off. As the weather warmed up, we were able to kind of attack it more in a cleanup phase on Monday the 3rd and the 4th. We had a total of 19 calls for service. And then as far as materials, we do have the capacity to store about 15 to 30 yards of sand and 15 to 30 yards of salt. That's fairly small amount, but given the fact that we have a very small yard, that's about all we can handle as far as what we have space to store on site. We also do have the 4,400 gallon storage tank of the de-icer. What we did go through during this event was 20 yards of sand and 35 yards of salt, as well as 400 gallons of liquid de-icer. I was going to say that salt was our really, most effective tool during this event. Every event is different, and you kind of just have to be ready to, deploy whatever is going to work in that situation. So we did apply the salt that we had on hand, and then we were able to get 2 additional loads from WashDOT. And it's difficult to get additional supplies like salt and sand during the event, because at that point in time, it's, a region-wide response and everybody is trying to get those resources. So we are lucky to get that extra salt from the DOT. I wanted to show you just kind of how we compare to other cities. Kirkland was just recently doing kind of a survey of other cities in the area, and so I was able to get this information for them. As far as just comparing us to Bothell, which is about twice our size, and then Kirkland, which is about twice the size as Bothell. Our population is just under 24,000. We have 145 lane miles that we maintain in the way of snow removal. And we had, a crew respond, 6 in Kenmore and 6 from North Shore Utility District, giving us a total of 12 crew members to work around the clock. City of Bothell has just under 50,000 residents. They have 250 to 30 lane miles that they treat. They have 365 that they're responsible for, but they said that they are plowing about up to 300 lane miles, and their response crew is 14 total. City of Kirkland is just over 92,000. They have 250 lane miles to maintain, and they have a crew of 38 that respond. Now, they do have a lot of other additional staff that provide administrative support, dispatch, and that kind of thing. So that's not included. That's just the crew on the ground. After the storm is when the real work begins. As I said, that every event is unique and different, and you just kind of have to be ready to respond however fits the needs of the event itself. But after the storm, the cleanup process is usually pretty much the same. So we're getting rid of excess snow and slush. That slush and snow buildup cause, when we have a quick melt and a lot of snow, we get flooding. And so we're typically responding to localized flooding within the city. We usually have the same kind of, typical areas that what we call our hot spots that we respond to. But then there's also just catch basins in the street get covered up with, layers of snow. And then if they're covered up and we get a big fast melt, you know, oftentimes there's nowhere for that water to go. So clearing catch basins is, you know, a major focus for us. Damage control. So, you know, when we get lots of snow, we tend to have some vegetation that's been damaged. And of course, those lovely potholes that come in right after the snow clears. We do a lot of street sweeping, cleanup, because we're trying to pick up all the sand that we just deployed. So we try to use sand sparingly, only when we really truly need to, so that we're not then just creating more work for ourselves. So we do have to clean that up. We then are working on cleaning up our equipment, making the necessary repairs, and cleaning up our yard. We typically try to have a debrief and talk about lessons learned. You know, unique situations come up, and there's always something we can learn from one event to prepare us for the next one. And so we do that, and then we usually, once we get all done with that stuff, we're catching up on the stuff that we weren't able to do because we put all of our resources into responding to the storm, and get back to our normal routine. That's what I have for you tonight. Do you have any questions?
Can we take down the screen share really quickly? Thank you.
Yep.
Councilmember Baker.
Yes, Ms. Gordon, I really have nothing but great things to say about you and your crew. You guys, ever since we brought you into the house, which is probably the best decision that we have ever made, you're just on top of things. The city looks so much better, and people, I've gotten comments from people who previously never got the roads in front of their houses plowed. You guys are out there and getting it done very quickly. I cannot say enough good things about you and your crew. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Councilmember File.
Thank you. Ms. Gordon, we had amazing feedback from our community, even at Coffee with Councils, about the service of your crew and the service to our community. I want to thank you again, applaud you for that. And I do know in one of your past presentations, in talking about the de-icer, we use a pretty green de-icer for the treatment of our roads. And I know that you had mentioned that would be even evolving a little bit more after using up the product. So does that mean we've used up our remaining product and we're evolving, given that you use so much de-icer?
We actually didn't use very much de-icer. That was 400 gallons is just one truckload, which is, you know, a pretty small amount. In this event, it didn't really make sense to use the de-icer. It didn't really do much for us. Ideally, you want to put that on prior to freeze, so it prevents the bond of the snow to the roadway. But unfortunately, it was, it came in fast. It was already the roadway was already very cold, and so it didn't really, it didn't do what we would like it to do, and it doesn't really work very well in applying it after the fact. So we really didn't use very much this go around.
Well, again, we really appreciate you and your crew. And I know that this, the snowstorm hit at a very unfortunate time, right as Christmas was hitting. And so we know that took time away from your families to serve our community. So we especially thank you for your time and commitment service during, the family holidays. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. City Manager.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Councilmember Baker said, and Councilmember File said. I thought that Jennifer, under her leadership, executed a great plan for snow removal, and I just thought it went really well. And I live in Kenmore, as you all do, and I just heard lots of great feedback from the community. One quick story. So I had knee surgery just a few days after the event, and my surgeon lives in Arrowhead. And So I'm just outside the operating room and I've got the IV in and the gown and everything. I'm about to go in and he comes in to say hi to me. And the first thing out of his mouth was, "Hey, I want to thank you for a great snow response." He said, "I live in Arrowhead and it's hilly down there." And he said, "I still had to get to work every day and it was easy for me to get to work thanks to you guys." So cool. And then they put me under and but also I want to do a big shout out to Nud and Al Nelson under his leadership in providing that partnership. We partner in a variety of ways with North Shore Utility District. And this was an example, a great example of the great partnership we had with them. And they too had to come out and, during the holidays and respond as well. So I'm grateful for them.
Yeah, I want to reiterate what my colleagues have said here too. This is above and beyond what we would have had when we were still partnering with Lake Forest Park. Really appreciate the work everybody put into this, and the results are visible and it's improving people's lives. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
All right, next up, we have a presentation on bus service updates, Sound Transit presentation with discussion with our guest, Luke Lamon, Sound Transit Government and Community Relations Corridor Manager. And Councilmember Baker, could you please lower your hand in Zoom? Thank you. All right, Mr. Lamon.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mayor Herbig, council members, board member Baker. Very nice to see everyone. It's been a while since we've been here in front of you all, and we really appreciate the time. As Mayor Herbig said, my name is Luke Lamon with Sound Transit. I'm going to get us kicked off. I'm actually joined by a few of my colleagues, and they'll actually be doing most of the heavy lifting this evening. So Brian DePlace, our Director of System Planning, he's going to start. And, typically, well, at least of late, since about 2015, every time we're out here, we're talking about future bus service. Today, we're actually going to spend a little more time on existing along the 522 corridor. But then we are also joined by two members of our Stride BRT leadership team. One face is probably familiar, Paul Cornish, and then another newer face that we wanted to introduce to you all, Rick Kapka. They're going to be here as well. So Brian's going to kick us off. He's going to run through some slides talking about just service along the corridor since the North Gate restructure. And then Paul and Rick will be available, as well as myself, for any discussion, questions, comments. And with that, I know Brian is going to be sharing his screen. Let's see. Sorry, I'm getting a message from him. Was Brian able to be promoted as a presenter? Let's see. Sounds like he might be having trouble. Yeah.
Hold on. Let's troubleshoot.
Okay.
Let's see if this works.
Look forward to the day when somebody can just come up to the table and sit and present.
Great.
I know, seriously, I don't know about you all, but with myself, we're 2 years and I'm still like talking when it's on mute, fumbling when I'm trying to put slides up. So, but it looks like we're good because I can see Brian. So
yeah, and I was able to hear the whole thing. So I'm assuming everyone can hear me now as well.
We can hear you.
Great, thank you.
And I'm not sure if anyone can hear me, but
We can hear you.
it wasn't the case earlier. But I'd like to welcome Luke and Brian and Paul and other colleagues from Sound Transit for this presentation tonight. So I hope that the council gets a chance to get the information and get any questions answered as well. So thank you.
I can't hear you, Mr. DePlace. You're on mute.
There we are. Can people see the screen?
Yes.
All right, thank you so much for indulging me there. Okay, so I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about the ST Express Route 522, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, and the plans that we've implemented since the Northgate extension opened up, as well as some feedback we've heard and how we're addressing the feedback related to how the service is going. So can you guys see the next slide now? Yes, okay. So to give people a little bit of context, the Sound Transit Board approved the restructuring of a number of our ST Express routes with the opening of the Northgate Link extension, which happened in October of last year. As part of that whole restructure process, ST Express 522 now terminates at Roosevelt Station instead of heading all the way to downtown Seattle. The design of that service was planned in close coordination with King County Metro in their complimentary service in the 300 series. The idea behind this new service, after multiple phases of public outreach and planning, was for ST Express to provide a frequent all-day service with Metro supplementing the peak direction trips, even as this was going to have some instances of slower travel times during part of the day. During multiple phases of outreach, we heard approximately about 63% of our respondents during that outreach process stated that this service design would meet their travel needs. We also did a number of other restructures up at Northgate itself with community transit and a number of the 500 series of ST Express truncating at Northgate Station. So similar process there. If I go to the next slide, this restructure of our service is consistent with our future plans as we're continuing to build out the system to build a more connected network with more transfers. Specifically, as Link and BRT expand, they will completely or partially upgrade and replace the ST Express service that we all have come to know and love today. We'll see this with Eastlink coming on in just over a year, and so on as we move up into Linwood and down into Federal Way. Since the implementation in October of 2021, when the Northgate Link extension opened, Sound Transit has received feedback from a number of riders of Route 522 regarding, I've listed them here, the transfer environment at Roosevelt Station, the impact on travel times, particularly in the peak direction. It's hard to, compete with the express lanes coming into downtown Seattle and out of downtown to Seattle. And so I want to talk about what we're hearing and what we're doing about that. Some of the time transfers also, especially outbound when people are arriving at Roosevelt Station. We've heard some feedback that they're not able to always get their bus quite as quickly as they want to. And we've also heard that some of the online trip planners are not working as optimally as they should. And then I think kind of compounding all of these problems is the ongoing COVID pandemic and the kind of peak and surge impact that's having on staffing levels right now. So you can imagine if you're sort of relying on service and we're across, it's happening across the nation and also here in the Puget Sound region, when operator gets sick and they call in sick. This is happening multiple times throughout the days, and that has a huge impact on people that are trying to get to where they need to go. So that's impacted our ability to consistently deliver a high quality level of service. So let me talk a little bit about how we are responding. So having heard this feedback, it was super valuable for us. We were also noticing as we were monitoring the data of Link, of the light rail system, it was running a little bit slower than what our models had suggested. And so once we reached implementation, as you're heading kind of northbound on Link, if it was running a little bit slower, we'd had a timed connection planned with the 522. So if you're emerging from the Roosevelt Station and trying to get to the bus, there were instances where the bus would leave and then you'd have to wait for the next bus, not an optimal condition. So we were able to actually get outside of the normal union bid cycle and actually adjust the Link schedule. That went into effect about 2 weeks ago. So we're hoping that, I haven't actually been out there since then, but I was out there before. We're hoping that this new adjustment will actually help improve with the time connection. We're also then working on the bus side to make sure that we're going to have the right amount of layover time on the bus side, and that will go into effect in the March service change. In addition, we were aware of the need for better transit amenities. After implementation, a new bus shelter was added on that outbound stop. That southbound stop that we see coming in to Roosevelt Station is temporary. Seattle Department of Transportation had originally planned on delivering it earlier. Like with a lot of public works, they're dealing with staffing challenges as well. They communicated to us as recently as last week that they are on track to deliver in the first quarter of this year a new stop with better amenities at that southbound location, and then improved signalized crossing at 67 to allow pedestrians better access to get safely to the light rail station. And then we're going to continue to monitor and manage the COVID-related staffing levels. I was looking at our data this morning. So King County Metro operates the 522 service. We have Community Transit operating our service to the north, and Pierce Transit operating our service to the south. You know, just to be very transparent, we are all experiencing pretty acute staffing problems right now. On any given day, we may have 10% missed trips. That's, we're hoping, looking at the data in King County and Snohomish County, we're hoping we're starting to get on the other side of the Omicron surge, and that some of the at least acute staffing levels will become a little less acute, and then that kind of the longer term staffing challenges, we're hoping to be able to adjust schedules to have just a more reliable service. But I do acknowledge that the Omicron surge has definitely impacted the ability to have completely reliable trips every single day. We have worked also to improve the online trip planners. Sound Transit and Metro trip planners do reflect accurate travel times. And I know for a while, and it's still maybe happening occasionally, the Google trip planner that some of us use on our phones was missing the first trip. So if you were, say, trying to catch a link, it wouldn't acknowledge that link was actually, like, you would be able to catch it easier. And so when you were planning it, it missed that trip. And so it just kind of almost doubled sometimes your wait time. So they are third party, so we can't control what they do, but we've been working with them to see if they can more accurately reflect how long it takes to get between the bus stop and the light rail platform. And then finally, so this is kind of all the stuff that when you would expect when you implement a pretty significant bus restructure, we're going to be monitoring and implementing it and managing the situation, seeing what tweaks we can make. We also want to make sure that we're continuing to hear from people. So we did conduct an online survey to make sure we haven't missed something and that we're trying to understand all the issues. We're currently processing those results right now. And then we're planning to reach out to some folks that responded and have a little more focus group sessions just to see if there's anything else we can do, if there's anything else we would be missing and that we could implement to help improve that travel situation. So that's it, kind of in a nutshell, what I have for the 522 service. Happy to take any questions, any additional feedback.
Any questions? Councilmember Shrubnik.
Well, I really appreciate you coming out to present, and it's heartening to see that you have at least heard the feedback, and that I, for one, was the only person providing that feedback. Yeah, I'll just say once again, and I know it's water under the bridge at this point, but it is a loss to our community to no longer have a direct bus. It used to be the case that folks in Kenmore could, at peak and other times, count on a seat and having a seat on a bus, getting on that bus, opening their work and having 35 to 40 minutes to do work. or to do whatever they want to do with a seat on a bus and getting to their location. We can no longer do that. So that just simply is a loss. We can't go back at this point. So the next best thing is smooth transfer. And it sounds like you are working on that. I am concerned that we have lost with COVID and the implementation and the problems with Trip Planner, potentially hundreds of riders that will be unwilling when COVID ends to get back on the bus, whether it's, perceived issues with timing due to looking at Trip Planner, or whether they're real issues with real time, losses. I don't know how to fix that at this point. We have multiple problems that have occurred over the last 2 years, not all of them, many of which are not under your control. Totally get that. But I just don't know how to repair the perceived issues that might dissuade people from taking the bus again in the future.
Thank you for that feedback. And I do agree that, these last couple of years have had a pretty significant impact on, well, a lot of things, and transit in particular. And I think, it's incumbent upon us at Sound Transit is to run a very reliable service. And, I think that's why we're focused right now to really make sure that transfer experience works well for folks. And I get that 2-seat ride that change is really hard. I totally get it. And, I think our job is to try and make that as easy as possible. And so we will continue to work through those issues, and hopefully by continuing to provide reliable service, getting better at that, and then the improved access that will happen with that connection. Our goal is to continue to work and build trust along this corridor. So thank you for that feedback. I appreciate it.
Councilmember File.
Thank you. I really appreciate the fact that you're going to be working on improving connectivity and timeliness within the exchanging of routes. However, it used to be a quick ride for our community and our surrounding communities to get downtown. It's no longer the case. When I hear my own 20-year-old son talk about his commute downtown and his millennial friends, they're looking at comfort now versus riding the bus. Why take a longer bus ride if it's going to take the same amount of time in a car? So that's problematic. And then this is a generation that preferred to take a bus over being in a car. But that being said, I hope that we can work towards increased ridership and solving those staffing issues, and a return to rapid bus transit to downtown Seattle and back. Otherwise, it's just such an incredible loss to our community, and I am greatly disappointed. I'm all for improvement in technologies, but this is disappointing for our community. And I'm speaking on behalf of those who offered their complaints, and I've listened and I've heard them. But we need to do a little bit better here. And I look forward to an improvement in this pathway. So thank you.
Councilmember Baker. You're muted.
My concern is with the physically challenged, the disabled community, those with walkers with wheelchairs, and the older community that just don't walk as fast as everybody else. And that's a tough issue. I don't know what to do about it, because if you try to get the timings for the bus for the majority of people that get off of light rail and go up to the bus, there's people going to be left behind, and I don't know how to deal with it. But that's a big concern of mine, is having reasonable wait times between connections and not just watch a bus go off into the distance as you come out. So anyway, that's my concern.
I do agree that having as little wait time as possible would be ideal, because if you miss one, you can then, reliably have the next one coming. And, I think that is our vision, is to have frequent all-day service throughout the system. And, we are, as experiencing some pretty significant staffing challenges. And I think our goal is to continue to restore service in a way that we are able to implement a model of reliable, frequent, all-day service. So thank you for that, Councilmember Baker.
And I would like to thank, I'd like to thank you for coming out and giving the presentation. It's always helpful, and it's good to have be kept up to date on this. I would like to put in a personal pitch for I know it's not a Sound Transit route, but for folks who want a one seat ride down, especially if you're in South Downtown, there's the 322 that I discovered by when I had to get down to my new job. I put it into Google Maps and it told me about a bus I'd never heard of. And it jumps in the express lanes, pops out at 5th and James. And if you work for the city or the county or down in that neck of downtown, it's a great one-seat ride, at least in the AM. So just putting that out there in case people aren't aware. The way back, I end up having to take Link and switch over at Roosevelt, which has been generally okay in my experience. But any other questions, comments? Deputy Mayor O'Kane? I know Deputy Mayor O'Kane's having.
I just had a disconnect from my laptop, so I've just dialed in from my phone. Excuse me for the disruption. I just want to just join in with the comments of hopefully down the line we will be able to have a one seat ride to downtown Seattle again. I recognize where we're at today, but I just wanted to step in with what Councilmember File was requesting, because it is really important to our community. I realize decisions have been made that have gotten us to here. I'm happy to hear about the improvements that you're making now, but I just wanted to reiterate that the one seat ride to downtown is important, and I hope that someday we do get it back. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Kugler.
Thank you. First off, I'd like to thank you all for coming and presenting to us, taking the time to listen to our writers and gather their feedback, and then to specifically address some of the concerns that they brought up. I really appreciate you doing that. I do think that moving forward, while it will be good to run focus groups with current 522 writers, I think there is an opportunity to maybe reach out to people who you could potentially have lost, because I think they will offer really valuable input. I also was not 100% clear on the speed of links. So I know, Brian, you mentioned that it wasn't as fast as the model showed. Deputy Mayor O'Kane, I think there's a echo with your audio.
I think I got.
Okay, thanks. You said that the model showed a slower time than in actuality. Will that ever change, or that's just, the model is just off? I wasn't clear on that.
Yeah, so when we simulated the service with our models, it showed it running slightly faster than actually when we implemented it. So we adjusted the schedule so that it would have a better connection specifically at Roosevelt.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, the overwhelming feedback that we've gotten, which other council members have already shared, is really just the longer travel time. So anything that we can do to minimize that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? All right, I'm not seeing any more. I want to, again, thank everybody for coming here and making the presentation. It's always helpful. And yeah, I appreciate your time. Great.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we really appreciate it as well. And you will certainly be seeing more of us. 2022 is going to be a busy year, specifically on the Stride front. So we will be back soon.
All right.
Thanks, Luke.
Thank
And
you.
our next topic is a presentation from the Regional Homelessness Authority. Just in full disclosure, this is where I have my day job. So I'm going to recuse myself from this part of the discussion, and Deputy Mayor O'Kane will be running this part of the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor Herbig. So our next presentation will be by Alexis Rink, our sub-regional planning manager from King County Homelessness Authority. She'll be presenting on regional homelessness services and coordination. Looks like with a focus on severe weather shelter summary. So, Alexis.
Well, thank you so much, Deputy Mayor. Oh, and I just wanted to say thank you so much, Deputy Mayor. And we are forging a strong partnership with the Regional Homelessness Authority. I'm just so delighted to be working with Alexis and her partnership. I am just grateful. We spend a lot of time really working hard together and thinking about the future and the role of the Regional Homelessness Authority. And I thought it was a good time given we had the severe weather event and there were daily meetings and we were really troubleshooting significant issues, and I was glad to be part of it. I thought it'd be helpful to have Alexis come and share a little bit more and talk about what's coming. So welcome, Alexis. Happy to have you.
Well, thank you, Assistant City Manager Lukash. Alexis.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Deputy Mayor, and thank you so much, Assistant City Manager. Really appreciated being on those daily calls with you. It was quite a time, and just frankly, really proud of the work that we were able to do and the coordination we were able to make to really protect and serve our community's most vulnerable. So good evening, all council. It is great to be in virtual community with you. I'm here today to speak about our regional severe weather response with a specific focus on North King County, East King County, South King County, as well as the Snoqualmie Valley in this presentation. Those are the subregions that the sub-regional planning team was leading coordination on. It was mentioned earlier that the severe weather event could not have happened at a worse time, especially with coinciding with 2 holiday weekends. But I'd also like to uplift that for the Regional Homelessness Authority as a brand new agency. We inherited Seattle's body of work starting January 1st. So we were mid severe weather event when we inherited severe weather response mid-event. And so it was just a really chaotic time, but we got through, and really excited to talk through a bit about what we were able to do. So to give you a sense of what the landscape for severe weather really looks like, especially in subregions outside of Seattle, we really look at our existing emergency shelters, that also expand capacity in response to a severe weather event. Then we also have severe weather shelters, which are activated at a certain point. Activation kind of varies depending on the site. Many of these are run out of churches, others are ran out of community spaces, but one of the things that we've noticed in a complicating factor for planning is that a lot of these activate at different points. Some activate when they're 6 hours below freezing, some activate when it's 12 hours below freezing, some activate when there's 2 inches of snow on the ground. But just want to uplift, we have a number of these sites, which we'll talk about in a second, that were activated in response to this event. When we're also looking at our regional infrastructure, we look at warming centers, both official ones, and then we also look at public spaces that function as warming centers. And these include King County Library locations, city halls, and community centers. So visually, it looks like this. So to walk you through a little bit of what our regional infrastructure looks like, the red flags indicate a severe weather shelter. Our blue flags indicate an existing emergency shelter. A number of which again expand their capacity in response to severe weather. The tealish green color indicates a King County Library location. Orange indicates a space operating as a warming site. And lastly, the yellow flags indicate a pending severe weather shelter location. So we are in conversation actually with a number of spaces to expand severe weather shelter locations. So we're still working with these locations, but they did not activate during the severe weather event. So looking at a little bit just by the numbers, in the city of Seattle, we had 6 sites that were operating as severe weather shelters specifically. Seattle has a number of emergency shelters, but for the purposes of talking about Seattle in this sense, we're just going to focus on the 6 that were activated in response to the event. In South King County, there were 12 sites that were operating, again, including emergency shelters as well as the severe weather shelters. In East King County, we had 7 sites, including 2 of the safe parking programs utilizing hotel vouchers in partnership with the city. In North King County, we had 3 sites, and there is 1 site operating in the Snoqualmie Valley. To continue with the numbers, we had a total of 27 different spaces across the subregions operating with a total of 19 different operators. When we were fully activated, we had over 900 units, so beds and rooms that were available in subregions outside of Seattle. So when we look just at the severe weather shelter capacity that was added, we added an additional 260 units. I do want to note that we have a data limitation here. Hotel rooms were heavily utilized throughout the course of the severe weather event, with several cities and providers using them. And we're still waiting on some of those numbers, just so we can have a more full, complete picture of exactly how many folks were served throughout the event. To give a sense of timeline, in the days leading up to that holiday weekend, we actually had sites activating on the 23rd. So leading up to Christmas, we had 21 different sites operating. 5 of those were severe weather shelter sites or expansions that had been activated immediately after the holiday. For the following 3 days, we had a total of 27 sites operating with an additional 6 severe weather sites and expansions that had been activated. I believe all of those were actually in South King County. And then throughout just leading New Year's Eve to New Year's Day, we had slow deactivation with 22 sites operating by the final day. So looking across unit availability throughout the event, the blue line signifies the total number of units available on a given day, and the yellow line signifies utilization. Overall, we had about an 80% utilization rate. You can see a bit of the breadth between the 2 lines. Many of the spaces did actually have some additional space, but many were actually at capacity, with just 1 organization, to our knowledge, actually going above capacity. I do want to highlight that at the very end of this chart, you can see with the wind down of shelters that these 2 lines cross in a very disappointing and disheartening way, as many sites began closing, but the need remains steady. Throughout the event, as was referenced earlier, we coordinated daily sub-regional calls. So we had a North King County call where we invited in representatives from each one of the North King County cities, as well as service providers serving North King County, as well as, I believe, some additional food activation networks. I know some public health folks have been invited in on those calls as well as advocates and faith-based partners. And during these calls, we really focused on addressing kind of immediate issues that were arising in each subregion, whether it be around food, transportation, PPE, to try and address any kind of COVID exposures or outbreaks, and just getting clear on the available resources and information from other government partners. So those were the daily subregional calls throughout the event. I do want to know our team also provided support for sites that were opening for the first time and needed an additional hand in just being clear on what are the best protocols for keeping a safe space, how volunteers can get trained, so on and so forth. Throughout the event, we also took an effort towards activating a number of food access and food justice networks. As I imagine folks here may know, a number of shelters really depend on community meals and the donation of community meals to just support their work. And with the severe weather event, a number of those scheduled donors were unable to get out of their driveways, which meant less food coming into our shelter system. Now, many shelters do happen to have, food reserves, but with the staff, needing to work and serve more folks, it just became for a challenging environment. So we were able to activate some food access and justice networks and get additional meals brought over and also facilitate the transportation of those meals. And then we also helped with delivery of materials. We were able to bring in socks and hand warmers and deliver them to shelters in need, because every little bit at that time really counted. I do want to highlight just a couple of challenges that came up from our team, as I just referenced a little bit, like transportation and food and meal access are something we're keenly focused on trying to come up with some solutions to address as we look at a potential event that could happen later this season. I do also want to highlight that the holiday weekend really limited the availability of indoor day spaces for our folks. During both holiday weekends, King County Library locations were not open. That did pose a significant challenge and concern for this community on where folks could be. Staffing across the board, as was also referenced earlier, we know staffing, there are tremendous staffing challenges, and there were a number of shelters as folks also would need to call out because of COVID exposure or concerns, or they were showing symptoms. There were some tremendously strained shelter staff with ratios. I think the highest ratio I'd heard was one staff person per 50 people, upwards of that potentially. And then COVID and Omicron exposure. It really was a confluence of a number of challenging situations for the team. And I think tied with this, we know that a number of folks decided to leave the profession in response to the conditions that they were under during the severe weather event, from being over a holiday weekend, from being in the middle of a pandemic and being understaffed. And so while I hate ending on a somber note, I just want to take a moment to express our tremendous concern for the sector right now, and for the folks that were with me on daily calls trying to navigate a really challenging situation and over a holiday weekend. And so I believe this about wraps up my presentation. Oh, well, actually it doesn't. So we have some next steps, which do lean in a much more positive direction. We have been doing debriefs with the various subregions to talk through what went well, what could have gone better, what can we commit to changing immediately, and what should be our long-term goal as we look to coordinate more efficiently and effectively. We are working on improving our communication, coordination, and planning with public health, as well as with Metro and other transportation partners, particularly HopeLink and Sound Generations, as well as with city emergency management offices. I know our team actually underwent emergency management training recently, as we're really looking at becoming much more an emergency response agency, which is frankly what our homelessness crisis is calling for at this point. Additional next steps, we are reconnecting with the sites that activated to see if they will be able to activate again this season if needed. And we're also identifying some strategies to support our workforce and volunteer base. And with all of that, I do want to close at least my comments with tremendous gratitude to providers and volunteers that served throughout the event, for everyone's leadership in this moment. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have. Thank you.
So I'd like to open this up for questions and comments.
And please excuse me, my view I've been having some difficulties, so I'm just spreading out to see if I have any raised hands.
Councilmember Kugler, Deputy Mayor.
Councilmember Kugler.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Alexis, thank you so much for coming and presenting. I have a couple of questions. One is, what could the City Council do to help support this work? If you have any suggestions, I would welcome that. The other is specifically when it comes to unit occupancy and the available units of the severe weather shelter. I was curious if you could describe more of the reasons for not having as many beds available by the end of that situation.
Wonderful. I can speak to that. I'll start with your second question around unit availability. With the severe weather shelter sites that had closed down, decreased capacity. That was in response to the weather getting a bit warmer, and also just from a resource standpoint, they were unable to sustain serving that number of people with the staff that they had. A number of severe weather shelter sites are also entirely volunteer run, with some being run out of churches with a pure volunteer base. And folks were pretty tired at the end of that. After serving, I'd like to note, and I don't think I expressed it clearly, the event went on, at least from how we were following along, about 12 days. with some volunteer sites staying open for about a week, and having folks get exposed throughout the course of the event. But folks, I think one of the frankly most disheartening pieces of this is that there were a number of sites where people wanted to continue staying inside and did not have the option to, because a site was closing or because the facility just could not keep up that expanded capacity. So it was a very hard day, honestly, with a lot of tears, if I could be tremendously honest in this moment about what the situation we were all in. I did not come with a recommendation for council, I'm afraid, to speak to the first question you raised. I mean, continued partnership and I deeply appreciate it for Assistant City Manager Lukash's participation in the daily calls and being tuned into the work that we're doing. I think we're always in favor of expanding and strengthening our partnerships, and would love to perhaps revisit in the future, maybe with more clear kind of action items potentially, but I don't have any off the top of my head, which it feels like a fault on my part, because I would love to tell you, here's completely what we would love to see you do, but support and partnership and continued conversation, I think, is what I can feel comfortable sharing right now. Thank you.
Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Rink. I think that you're dealing head on with one of the fundamental issues of our time. And my family's owned property in Seattle for well over 100 years. We've owned property now in Kenmore for over 60 years. We remember from family stories, remember the Great Depression and the just attendant shame of having Hoovervilles. That's what they were called. It was down by the kingdom. It was called a Hooverville. The shame upon a society as a whole, all of us, that people would be in such squalor. And right now it's been incredible to me that we've had such amazing, unprecedented boom town wealth in Seattle and our region. And at the same time, we've had unprecedented poverty. And it's been a shame to me that we haven't dealt with it as we should. I think the programs of providing emergency shelter is critical, obvious way to have to deal with it. And I think it supports us not only morally, it's the right thing to do, but my day job is a public defender in Snohomish County. I've looked into it somewhat legally, and I think we're on better legal grounds if we supply people with emergency shelters. If we then sometimes need to draw the line and be able to tell people, we can't have folks living in tents everywhere, presenting a public health hazard or issue, which has certainly become the case in some places. I think we're strengthened also legally if we have shelter to be able to point them to, as well as morally. So thanks for your work.
Thank you, Councilmember.
And do we have any further questions or comments for Ms. Rink? I don't see any further raised hands, but I do want to give my thanks to you, Alexis, for the incredible work you've been doing. I know you were one of the first people hired in the King County Regional Homelessness Authority. And I've had the pleasure of meeting with you, since you've started. And I just have to say, the work your organization is doing for our region is incredibly powerful and important. And it takes heart and vision to help build a path towards housing for all. So thank you for what you do. I know that our community is incredibly grateful. And thank you again for another outstanding presentation. Now I think I can hand this back over to Mayor Herbig. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is public comments. We welcome our community members to the council meeting. In this forum, the council does not engage or dialogue with the public. The primary role of the council is to listen. Please use the raise hand feature now if you wish to speak. Guests must address comments to the mayor and city council. The clerk will acknowledge your request and call your name when it's your turn. Your time will start when we confirm that we can hear you. Please state your name and city of residence for the record and keep your comments to the allotted time. We will not split your time with others or reset your time except with express approval of the presiding officer. Screen sharing is not allowed. You can submit materials to the council or clerk in advance. Please do not comment about pending development projects on which the council will make future decisions, as those are quasi-judicial matters, and council members must limit their communications about such matters. This meeting is being recorded. Thank you for taking the time to express your comments. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor Herbig. At this point, we would like to hear from the following group of guests in this order: John Culver, followed by Tracy Benishinsky, David Morton, David Dorian, Stacy V, Pastor Anya, and Sarah Gustafson. John Culver, can you hear us?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead.
Great. Good evening, council. Oh no, my screen got maximized. Hang on. Off to a good start with the tech. Okay, good evening, council. I'm John Culver, resident of Kenmore. A few weeks back, I submitted resolution language for bringing initiatives to the city of Kenmore, and I'm stoked to see a corresponding resolution up for vote tonight. I want to thank council for choosing to take this up, and city staff in their diligence in research and prep work and all the necessary crossing of T's and dotting of I's. I want to send a huge thanks to everyone in the community who has turned out big to make the case for initiatives loud and clear. You all made this happen. Your voices are powerful, folks. Wield that power. I hope a vigorous and spirited community discussion follows the passage of tonight's vote. I've got just a couple more things I want to speak to. First, just want to remind folks, North Shore School Districts has 3 items on the ballot in a special election going on right now. Teachers are heroes, especially in these wild times, and schools need our continued support. I would urge everyone to get their ballot returned. The ballot box is right outside City Hall, or you can return it by mail, postage free. It was 3 very easy choices for me. I also want to speak in support of Camp Unity. They have done amazing work and helped a lot of folks who need it, particularly with all the misfortunes COVID has wrought over the last couple of years. And as I think as a community, we should stand with our most vulnerable. That's all I got. Happy Monday. Initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Culver. Tracy Benishinsky.
Hi.
Hi, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Great. Tracy Benishinsky, Kenmore. On April 3rd, 1968, the day before his assassination, the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. spoke at Mason Temple in Memphis before a crowd of a few thousand people. He was in town to help galvanize striking sanitation workers and was asked to speak at the last minute. The sermon, which would be his last, is called "I've Been to the Mountaintop." 54 years later, his words are as relevant as they were the day he spoke them. "The nation is sick," he said. This is both figuratively and very literally true today. "Trouble is in the land," he said. "Today we see staggering income inequality, more and more of our neighbors living unhoused, food insecurity, decades of senseless and endless war, police militarization, mass incarceration, climate collapse, mass extinction, and so much more trouble. Division sown among us, making it even harder to craft a sane, productive, and healthy way forward. Confusion all around," he said. "Today we are burdened with the questions. Can we trust our elected leaders to work for the common good rather than corporate interests? And will our democratic norms and processes hold up to the baser authoritarian impulses living in and among us? Living through the political turmoil of the last presidential administration and now a global pandemic has been profoundly disorienting. But I know somehow that only when it is dark enough can you see the stars," he said. I'm sure there are varied interpretations and readings of what he might have meant by stars in this passage. My read for us tonight is that we are the stars, that we can find each other in this dark when all else is stripped away by the brilliance of our shared humanity and our essential goodness. And when we find each other, what might we do? There is so much we can do together. For one, you have the opportunity tonight to advance a stronger democracy by extending the democratic tool of ballot initiatives to the voters of Kenmore, and I encourage you to do so. The word democracy derives from the Greek words demos, meaning people, and kratos, meaning power or rule. And the principle of liberal democracy is a belief in shared power. What a wonderful way to support democracy by extending ballot initiatives to the voters who elected you. For another, we can, as a community, welcome Camp Unity to Church of the Redeemer with open arms, trusting that their governing rules and norms will continue to foster community and safety both within and outside the camp, as they did during past days at North Lake Lutheran Church in Kenmore. We can ask ourselves what, beyond a friendly welcome, we can do to support the human beings making their way through this period of their lives with Camp Unity as their home base. Let's start there and let's keep going together. Thank you, as always, for your leadership and work on behalf of all of us in Kenmore. I am deeply grateful for each of you.
Thank you, Ms. Benishinsky. David Morton.
Good evening, council members. I'm David Morton. I live near Redmond. When it comes to air pollution, it's helpful to keep in mind that there are several categories of air pollutants. Smog and soot. These are the two most prevalent types of air pollution. Smog, made of particulate matter and ozone, occurs when emissions from combusting fossil fuels react with sunlight. Soot, such as the particulate matter in diesel exhaust, is made up of a mass of impure carbon particles resulting from the incomplete combustion of fossil fuels. Hazardous air pollutants. Almost 200 of them are regulated by the Clean Air Act. Some of the most common are mercury, lead, dioxin, and benzene. In this category are many polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons found in kerosene. Pollen and mold. Although less directly connected to human activity, they can be considered a form of air pollution. Greenhouse gases. Carbon dioxide, often called carbon pollution, makes up about 80% of greenhouse gas emissions. Methane makes up about 10%. In May 2021, Governor Inslee signed the Climate Commitment Act, which established a program to help achieve Washington's greenhouse gas limits by 2050. While the Climate Commitment Act is focused on greenhouse gas reduction, it also creates an opportunity to address air quality concerns in communities most impacted by bad air quality. The Act states that as we lower greenhouse gases and carbon pollution, we must also reduce other forms of air pollution like fine particulates and ozone. The Department of Ecology operates less than 75 ambient air monitors around Washington. Most measure only particulate matter. The Climate Commitment Act directs ecology to measure 6 criteria air pollutants in overburdened communities: particulate matter, ozone, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide, and lead. Ecology will not be looking for volatile organic compounds, hazardous air pollutants, or polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. If an ecology air monitor were placed downwind of Cadman's asphalt plant in Kenmore, it could provide data to the public to make health decisions, show compliance or non-compliance with federal air quality standards, and support air pollution research studies. If you wish to get involved in the Climate Commitment Act, take an online survey where you can provide feedback to help ecology determine where sensitive populations face greater health risks from air pollution and could use more resources to address those risks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morton. David Dorian.
Hi there, can you hear me?
We can, go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor and Deputy Mayor, Council members, David Dorian from Kenmore. I wanted to start by saying I am humbled by the work that the Regional Homelessness Authority is doing. It was amazing to hear about that work, and obviously very, very worrying as well to hear of some of the impacts of the more difficult times that we've had recently with the weather event. But obviously homelessness is something that people in our community also experience year round. And that's something that's very hard to know, but it's humbling to hear of the work that's being done to support. And also I'm regularly humbled by the people in our community that I hear, like the North Shore Schools Foundation, Mary's Place, people who are helping, as the presenter put it, the most vulnerable in our society. And I realize that I'm not doing enough myself to help people that are experiencing homelessness. But I guess the one thing I can do is try and make sure that they don't also experience hopelessness by getting in the way of organizations that are seeking to help them. And that's why I'm here this evening to comment in support of Camp Unity. I think what they do is fantastic, and I know that we've heard excellent things from the camp being here before at several of the churches that we have in our city, and now looking to come back to the Church of the Redeemer. The way that the camp is set up includes background checks. There's community service program, working directly with the local cities and the local police. I've heard countless stories from people about having great experiences of visiting the camp with their youth groups, their sports teams, providing the meals that we heard talked about. It's just something fantastic that we can realize that the most vulnerable in our society are our neighbors as is put in some of our religious traditions in the West. So just really keen to mention that. I know there's some concern perhaps about the size of the space that the camp is coming into, but looking online, if you look on the FAQs page for Camp Unity, I think you can see photographs of the camp in much smaller spaces than it is being considered at the Church of the Redeemer. So I would just ask council and our community to stand behind Camp Unity and help give hope to those experiencing homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dory. And Stacy V.
Hi, Stacy V. Kenmore. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. First, thank you for making sure some of the ARPA funds were allocated and reached some of our residents at the 50% and below AMI. During this pandemic, the time with inflation like never before, and many just attempting to keep sheltered and food on their table, it means so much. We hope that the council goes one step further and adopts tenant protection rights like surrounding cities to keep renters in their home. Several organizations that help with tenant rights will be here supporting the need for tenant rights to be adopted quickly, as there is huge need and a backlog for services to help tenants to avoid homelessness. If I heard the correct address of 7614 Bothell Highway with intent to buy, it is Kenmore Village Mobile Home Park. Currently, they're in the work of legislator to allow homeowners, yes, homeowners, to purchase the property that their homes are on first. I know that there are organizations that could help, and I hope Kenmore is acting to protect these homeowners and keep it for long term. We have a few opportunities for Kenmore to be selected for emission testing by EPA in response to the Climate Commitment Act. Currently, they are requesting resident feedback for improving air quality in overburdened communities. With the cement plant, asphalt emissions, and traffic from 522, all emitting air pollution, all concentrated and impact in the downtown corridor, Burke-Gilman Trail, as well as the residents in the area where the wind sends the emissions path and this pollution, it would be great to be selected. There are also bills and opportunity to change rules for safer and cleaner industry emissions with public hearing through DOE and the Washington State Legislature. I support the initiatives and referendums. Also on the missing middle, I understand that the missing middle is supposed to fill the need for low, very low, and extremely low housing. I would like to see this highlighted as part of the Kenmore Comprehensive Plan. All the missing middle or short plats seem to be market and bonnet rate housing. We desperately need affordable housing. We look to you, the council, to direct staff to follow these needs and concerns of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Valenzuela. Pastor Anya.
Yes, hello. Everyone can hear me okay?
We can, go ahead.
Wonderful. Good evening, council members. As you know, Camp Unity has now stayed at Northlake Lutheran Church 2 times while I was the pastor at Northlake. I just want to say what a pleasure it was to host this camp. Not only are they a delight to be around, but I personally felt safer with them on our property. Before Camp Unity came and after, when they were not around, it was fairly common that we would arrive at church in the morning to find that someone had dumped their trash, even their furniture, right outside our dumpster, expecting, oh, they can take care of it. We had someone dump an old refrigerator once by our dumpsters. This cost us money, a struggling church. I even found sometimes needles in the bushes. But this never happened when Camp Unity was there. They have their own security that they set up, residents who patrol the property. They make sure all is in order and no one is taking advantage. When I would arrive in the morning, I would always stop by to say hello to the residents. And they would tell me, oh, Pastor, we found a window open last night, so we closed it for you. Or we checked the doors and they were locked, good job. I would also sometimes be at the church late at night alone. And this can be a little scary, especially in that area. It gets pretty dark out there. There aren't great lights. But that I was never worried when Camp Unity was there. They watched out for us, for me, for the church, and for our neighbors. Perhaps what was most impactful, though, was how the neighbors responded. I know there's been some neighbors, I think, that are concerned about Redeemer hosting. And we also had some neighbors who were not very happy about the camp coming at first. Most of them weren't so sure, even if they were like, well, okay. They were scared of the unknown. They see the news accounts of the tent cities that have popped up around Seattle, and they worry that that's what's happening here. Now, I'm guessing we may all have different opinions about those camps and what should be done about them, but I want to make sure you and everyone here watching knows Camp Unity is not one of those camps. Camp Unity is a structured camp. They do background checks on all their residents. They do not allow drugs or alcohol, and they contribute to every neighborhood that has the privilege of hosting them. So all this is just to say, thank you for supporting the camp. Thank you especially to the Church of the Redeemer who has agreed to host them. I cannot endorse them or the experience of hosting them enough. And to the neighbors who are concerned about this new experience, I know it's scary inviting people you don't know into the neighborhood, but I hope you will give them a chance. They are a community of beautiful people trying to find their way in a world that, generally speaking, does not welcome them. So let us be the exception. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Anya. Sarah Gustafson. Sarah Gustafson.
Hi.
Oh, there you are. Hello. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you. Sarah Gustafson here, and I live in Bothell. I'm also here to support Camp Unity as a guest at Kenmore's Church of the Redeemer. First, thank you, Kenmore residents and City Council for your work to build affordable housing. And welcoming Camp Unity is naturally related to this. And I also want to acknowledge that there are many different ways for communities to coexist with people without homes, to support them, and they are all valuable. And going back to Camp Unity, I've actually visited in person thanks to a neighbor of mine who organized a dozen other neighbors to make a meal for the campers. And back then, Camp Unity was at the Church of Christ, Woodinville. It was very calm, nothing even to see from the road. And inside the campground, it was organized. There was an office pod with computers for the campers to use, a sanitation station with toilets and a shower, and even a canopied living room area where people could come together. The campers lived in about 20 dwellings lined up in a row, almost like cabins on raised platforms with tarp sides. And it honestly reminded me of the cabins that I camped in when I was a Girl Scout about 25 years ago. And actually, one of the campers really graciously invited me to see their home. And it was really nice inside with a small desk for their work and a colorful bed. And the best part of the visit was sharing a meal with 4 or 5 campers in their living room area. And there I learned that some campers have jobs, others don't, and some freelance. For example, I talked with a person who fixes bikes and skateboards and a person who's an artist and a writer. And that person was, as we spoke, drawing beautiful portraits, and I will never forget it. Now, that's simply my experience, but I hope you agree that Kenmore and Camp Unity are a great fit. It's not just about serving the campers, but also helping the Redeemer Church congregation to live out their mission. And it's about allowing neighbors and friends to come together in fellowship to serve others. So thank you, Kenmore.
Thank you, Ms. Gustafson. The next group of residents we'd like to hear from, we'd like to call them in this order: Dakota Rash, followed by Mr. O'Leary Seattle, Robert Luke, Janet, Karsten Thode, Dave Lowe, and Elizabeth Mooney. Dakota Rash.
Hello, thank you all for the time tonight. I'm Dakota Rash. I live in Lake Forest Park. And I first want to mention, well, 3 topics tonight. First is that I definitely support the initiative movement in Kenmore. I think it'd be a great thing to, in this period of uncertainty as we go forward and face a lot of problems, to give the people a voice and a power. I think it's about trust, and hopefully you all trust the city or the people of Kenmore. Next, I want to applaud some comments tonight with regards to making sure there's transportation amongst cities. I definitely have been feeling a lot of complex emotions with regards to how our infrastructure is changing. And I think it's unfortunate that buses are going away. Generally, our infrastructure needs to be updated, so I'm glad that's happening. But at the same time, we need to transition towards a future where the cars aren't necessarily the default, and we can have bus access to where we need to go, and we can have other forms of enjoyable and comfortable transportation. So thank you, council members who spoke up in favor of that tonight. And my final comment has to do with something that no one's discussed tonight yet, but so I'll bring it up, is composting. I work in a city building, part of it, well, it's leased out, and we don't have the capacity to compost. And I know a lot of our items currently can be composted. We've switched to utensils that can be composted because other stores also do that, and they have composting. So I just want to put that on folks' radar. I don't know about the details of the city's capacity to have businesses compost. I know that residents can, but I just think that that would be an interesting thing to investigate. Composting isn't necessarily the best way to deal with the crises that come about with food waste. You know, we should be dealing with that in other ways, but having composting around is a good first step. And so I wanted to put that on folks' radar because it's been frustrating me a lot lately. But yeah, well, thank you for your time tonight. And yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Rash. 599, Mr. O'Leary, Seattle. (59917), Mr. O'Leary, Seattle.
Unmute. Yes. Hi, this is Michael O'Leary. Hi.
Oh, go ahead.
I am a resident of Kenmore, despite my email address. But I'm president of the Kenmore Community Club. I'm here tonight just to announce that we are happy to be hosting a COVID vaccination clinic on February 5th from 8:30 to 12:30 for anyone ages 5 and up. And it's being coordinated by Chief Todd Willem of Shoreline Fire Department and Gabe DeBay. And I just wanted to start to get the word out, to get the word out for people who want or need to get a vaccination, that will be there at the Kenmore Community Club from 8:30 to 12:30 on February 5th. I want to thank Councilwoman Fell for inviting me to be here to start getting that word out. And that's really all I have to say.
Thank you very much for that announcement. Robert Luke.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. I too want to just briefly comment on and offer my support of Camp Unity coming again to Kenmore. I have been a resident of Kenmore for over 30 years. And in fact, I live just a short distance from both North Lake Lutheran Church, who has, as Pastor Anya said, has twice hosted Camp Unity, and just a short walking distance from the Church of Redeemer Episcopal, who has applied for a permit to host Camp Unity this summer. Well, Camp Unity was here the 2 previous times at North Lake Lutheran. My wife and I had the honor and privilege to participate in preparing meals and delivering them, and then visiting and eating dinner with the people at Camp Unity. It was a great experience. Sitting down with them, eating with them, visiting with them, and learning that these folks are just like us. They're struggling with issues and challenges throughout life, and they're trying their best to respond to them. Unfortunately, they find themselves at this time temporarily without housing. And Camp Unity offers them that chance to have housing. Camp Unity and the inhabitants that live in Camp Unity are well organized, orderly, clean, neat. They police themselves, they're law abiding. They're just nice folks. And I can't think of a better situation for the oft used phrase of there, but for the grace of God go I. That fits this situation and the difference between them and us. There isn't that much of a difference. I look forward to meeting and sharing dinner with them again when they come to Church of the Redeemer Episcopal this summer. And I commend and thank the leaders and the congregation of Church of the Redeemer Episcopal for their Christian-like hosting of Camp Unity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Luke. Janet? Janet, can you hear us?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, go ahead.
Oh, I hear an echo. Do you?
No.
Is there too big an echo here?
I don't hear an echo, Janet.
Oh, good.
We hear you clearly.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
My name is Janet Hayes and I'm a resident of Kenmore, and I wanted to let the council know and that I was paying attention at the retreat, and I very much enjoyed it. I watched all of it on the day it was happening. I was frustrated when I found out that nothing that they discussed, I mean, each item was not, they didn't have a vote on anything, which surprised me. I didn't realize that that was how it worked, and it was just setting up for the year ahead. But one thing that I do think would have been very helpful if we had had a city town hall meeting previous to that. And I'm hoping when you have the next retreat that we will be having city hall meetings and town hall meetings, and that they will happen previous, and that will be on the agenda to discuss things to bring forward in that retreat also. I appreciate the council because of all their hard work, and I didn't realize that they have a very low amount of pay for what they do. And I know some of them work very hard at finding out what's happening in Kenmore and what they're voting on. That's a challenge. And because the only information they get is basically from staff who I believe have too much power. The other thing I wanted to say is I'm proud of Kenmore going along with the Camp Unity. I think it's going to be a learning opportunity for people, because what you'll find when you smile and even just wave to people that are struggling, you feel joy. It happens, and it's a wonderful thing. The next thing I'm asking is please to get the balance back in Kenmore. Council, staff, community, please vote yes on the initiative vote that you're going to be taking today. It is so important, and you will see such community involvement, and it will be positive. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Karsten Thode.
Hi, my name is Karsten Thode. I live in Bothell, and just wanted to come out to talk about Camp Unity and East Side. The work that the whole group does, what they work together is just something that we all should come together to help people. The Camp Unity is, I've I've been to the camp. They needed computers, so I helped bring up some computers to them. The whole thing is run extremely well. There are no alcoholism, there are no drug use. The people who are there are just on down times, and otherwise they're just outstanding people. They're looking for work, and they're doing well. So I just wanted to come in and and voice my thoughts on that, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Dave Lowe.
Hi, I'm Dave Lau. I'm a resident of Kenmore, and I'd like to speak in favor of the Camp Unity at the Redeemer Church of the Redeemer Episcopal Church. This particular demographic of what we generally call homeless, and this is a relative term, are going to be probably the easiest demographic to have the potential of having the most change, most beneficial change. In that these folks, because they're a lot of them have jobs already. There's a tremendous amount of organization with the camp, and the fact that they're not, drug addicted and have any alcohol abuse problems. There's a lot fewer hurdles for them to jump over to become homed again. They do provide several different services there for the camp members. It was mentioned that there's a trailer for sanitary services, bathrooms and showers, laundry and so forth, as well as some computer terminals for communicating with the outside world, i.e. employers or potential employers. And they do a fantastic job of policing their own environment. And they tend to leave their camp, when they do leave, cleaner than when they found it. So with that respect, I would like to, again, reiterate that please support and allow the camp to go forward at Church of the Redeemer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe. Elizabeth Mooney.
Hi, City of Kenmore. Thank you. I take it you can hear me, Anastasia.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Elizabeth Mooney, I've lived in Kenmore since 1995. I'm part of People for Environmentally Responsible Kenmore and very proud of that. And wanted to say that I'm hoping that now that it's about 2 years since we had our last science and lecture series, that we might start that up again. So hoping that'll work. And if it has to be by Zoom, that we'll figure that out. Because City of Kenmore, in order to be healthy, needs to have a lot of attention given to its environmental issues. And I'm certainly hoping that our rivers, our lakeshore are healthy for people as well as salmon habitat and birds, etc. So we need the clean air and the clean water and a clean ecosystem. So I want to support tonight that effort. And I believe that in order to do that, that our citizens will be able to be trusted to work with council and staff and the other community members, especially if we can support democracy and the voice of the people. And therefore, I want to say that I firmly support the council passing the citizens initiative tonight. And I want to thank all the citizens that have pushed that endeavor forward. Specifically, I would like to support the comments by John Culver, Tracy Bonazinski, David Morton, Stacy Valenzuela, Dakota Rash, and Janet Hayes. And in terms of our clean air, I would like to specifically ask council to listen to the comments by citizens about using more resources to gather data and assess the risks that may come not only from potential volatile organic compounds coming from large facilities like asphalt facilities that are on our lakeshore, but also from the state highway. So let's use the momentum that we have right now, our new year, and hopefully you will pass the Citizens Initiative tonight and we can all work together on that. I also want to thank all the citizens that have come in support of Camp Unity. It touches my heart to hear that this is what Kenmore may be doing right away. I think that is definitely the right thing to do. So thank you, citizens, for that, and council and staff for being open to that endeavor. Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Thank you, Ms. Mooney. We have 3 additional guests, Chris Neese, Celeste, and Hillary Windish. Chris Neese.
Hey there, I'm Chris Neese. I live in Bothell. Also just want to throw in a good word for Camp Unity. I've been a volunteer there for about 5 years now, do some website work, cook some meals. I've taken my kids to volunteer there. And I guess the thing I'd want to advocate, if any of you have not visited yet, there's a few really scary things about homeless camps, and I don't want people to get the wrong idea about it. One is, human waste. Of course, we've all unfortunately probably been in that situation in a city where somebody's doing their business. They have portable toilets. It's just like a construction site. They keep it clean. Another one is drugs. Camp Unity, just to confirm, is drug-free. They patrol themselves. They want to live in a safe place too. And the last one is trash. I mean, that's the most visible as you're going down the interstates. There's dumpsters there. They're regularly maintained. So I would just say, if any of you are a little bit worried about Camp Unity, you might not be imagining the right one. Stop by one of their locations in the afternoon. Take a look, and it might be a lot different than what you expect. So thank you guys so much for the support. Have a good night.
Thank you, Chris. Celeste.
Yes, thank you very much.
Go
My
ahead,
name
we
is,
can hear you.
you can't hear me?
We can, go ahead.
Okay. My name is Celeste Devaney, and I live in Bothell, and I have volunteered and been a part of the Camp Unity East Side family for a while. And I very much appreciate the mayor and the council allowing me and others to speak tonight. And I think that so much has already been said that there's only one other thing, or 2 other things that I would like to remind the council of. And one is that Camp Unity really does move people from homelessness to being housed in permanent housing. I had a chance to interview residents for a blog on homelessness a few years ago, and I interviewed a bunch of people, and they were on a pathway to housing. So by Kenmore welcoming them, Kenmore is supporting the change, and in a good and solid way, supporting people who are actually moving from homelessness to housing. In addition, the other thing was that I had the opportunity to help a disabled veteran who was a resident at the camp, and to drive him to where he needed to go. And so we're also, in addition to helping homeless people, there are going to be U.S. veterans in the camp, and that's something really good and that we can be proud of. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Celeste. Hillary Windish.
Hi, I hope you can hear me. Thank you
can.
for allowing me to speak. I also wanted to come and just offer my support of Camp Unity being in the Kenmore area. I actually have children who live in this area and who go to school at Kenmore Elementary, which is very close to where the Camp Unity was at the church at North Lake Union. And I felt very safe and very comfortable. I know that it was a very clean community, and I know that it helps people, as I've already heard said many times, to get out of homelessness, and that these people are people too, and they need somewhere to go. And I think it's a wonderful thing that Kenmore is willing and able to help these individuals. So I don't have a ton to say, and I know that it's been a long night of comments, but I did want to lend my voice too and say that I'd be really happy to see that continue in the Kenmore area. Thank you.
Thank you, Hillary. Mayor Herbig, I see no additional hands raised.
Okay, I'm not going to go individually through everybody's comments, but I do want to thank everybody who came and spoke. To those of you who brought up initiatives, we'll be discussing that during our business agenda coming up shortly. For folks who brought up Camp Unity, I believe that staff will be we'll be bringing that during staff comment near the end of the meeting. And Ms. Valenzuela, I wanted to clarify that the property that we were discussing earlier was 6215 Northeast Bothell Way and not a mobile home park further along the street. So with that said, our next council member file.
Yes, Mayor Baker, we've been going since 6:30 and I'm hoping that we could take a short recess for 5 minutes before moving on to next steps.
Sure. Yeah, let's do that. Let's take 5, come back at 8:50.
Thank you.
Wait a couple more moments for Councilmember Shrubnik. I have an angry cat next to me right now. All right. Next up on the agenda is the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So approved.
We have a motion by Councilmember File. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Kugler. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The consent agenda stands approved. Next, we have a public hearing, Automated Traffic Photo Enforcement Safety Program, Ordinance 22-0542, presented by Tobin Bennett Gold, Traffic Engineer. Mr. Bennett Gold.
Hi, good evening, council members. Thank you for having me back again. I'm always looking for opportunities to discuss traffic and traffic safety, and I'm glad I've been able to contribute to this discussion on implementing a photo enforcement program here in Kenmore. I wanted to take a minute to give a brief overview of what we've previously discussed. I applaud your endurance tonight, and I know in the past I've abused the word brief before, but for real this time, I promise I won't take long. The proposed program for photo enforcement is for photo enforcement of red light violations as well as school zone speeding violations. And by state law, those are the only 2 types of photo enforcement that are permitted insofar as what applies to the city of Kenmore. After analysis of several possible locations in Kenmore, we've identified 3 locations to serve as initial sites for photo enforcement. The criteria for selection was based exclusively on safety value we expect the automated photo enforcement to provide at these locations. The first location is for enforcement of red light violations at the intersection of 61st Avenue and Bothell Way. At this location, an engineering study in 2019 indicated that during afternoon peak hours for pedestrians crossing the north leg of the intersection while the walk sign was on, over 70% of those pedestrians had to move out of the way in order to avoid being hit by left turning vehicles running the red light. These pedestrian conflicts are a precursor to pedestrian crashes, and eliminating these conflicts is our best chance at correcting this issue before it leads to a tragic crash. Photo enforcement at this location would apply only for eastbound to northbound left turning vehicles because we have not found the other intersection movements to be similarly high risk in a manner that's correctable by red light cameras. We expect that photo enforcement here will be very effective at preventing red light violations for left turners. And while that brings a substantial safety benefit, it also means that at this location, we expect the cameras to generate very little net revenue. The second and third locations are for automated enforcement of the school zone speed limit in the Arrowhead Elementary School Zone on Juanita Drive and the Kenmore Elementary School Zone on 73rd Avenue. Photo enforcement at these locations would only be in effect during the school zone active periods, which are 90 minutes twice per school day, about 180 school days per year. At these locations, we expect there to be a substantial safety benefit during the times that the school zone is active. The potential revenue generated by these locations is highly variable and difficult to estimate, but we do expect it to meet the revenue estimates stated in the financial sustainability plan. The revenue that is generated by photo enforcement program is planned to be exclusively reinvested in our streets, both in the maintenance of our pavement and as a funding source for the city's traffic safety programs. In this way, the traffic safety cameras are doing double safety duty, Not only do they provide a safe school commute environment for our children and parents, but the revenue they generate will be leveraged to create a safer traffic environment throughout the city's entire transportation network. The program we've put together has been carefully considered and constructed in order to improve safety and provide sustained investment in our streets, and also to be transparent, fair, and equitable. I appreciate that over the past several months, you've given me the opportunity to walk you through all the details of the proposed Kenmore automated photo enforcement program. And I hope that tonight I can answer any other questions you may have before the council vote for approval of the proposed program next month on February 14th. If the program is approved, we expect to have cameras installed in the spring, after which will begin a lengthy warning period where drivers will receive warnings in the mail without any associated fine. The warning period would last until July for red light cameras, at which point notices of infraction would be mailed instead of warnings. And then shortly after the school year begins, issuance of notices of infraction for school zone speed violations would begin as well. Mayor Herbig, I can turn it over to you now for the public hearing and any questions the council may have.
Do we have any questions before we open up the public hearing? Councilmember Baker? You're muted.
Here in the first paragraph of your paper, you talk about how photo enforcement is part of the financial stability plan. And you go on to say that it is a long-term revenue source in our transportation infrastructure. And you go on to say that it reduces crash data and lowers speeds. I guess I'm just curious, where is that crash data? You say it's going to be reported, I believe, after the first year, but I really would like to see crash data before we implement this to show that it is actually warranted. And the same thing with tickets. Where are the violations with speeding? I don't see them, and you have not provided them. Can you provide me with with information on citations and crash data, please?
You're on mute.
Right, sorry. Yes, we have crash data for all of our city streets dated back to 2010. I could definitely provide you with a report for crashes that have occurred in school zones and also in the intersection. We don't have pedestrian crashes in the intersection of 61st and 522 Bothell Way. But in the case of that location, we have identified a high risk to pedestrians, and we have identified this as an opportunity to prevent severe crashes before they happen. At the other locations on our roads, we do have crash history. That was one of the criteria we used in our safety evaluation. So I don't have that prepared to share on my screen tonight, but I can definitely put that together and send it to you.
That would be great. I really appreciate that, along with the speed citations. Thank you.
Councilmember File.
Thank you. Now I understand these speeding cameras are going to be in our school zone areas, and often these thoroughfares are frequented by out of area residents who are usually predominantly the speeders through our community. So, while I very much support this issue, I do want to clarify that point for our community listening tonight. And I would like, I know there's healthy examples around the Puget Sound of this program working and working really well, but I would like to have some data from our Shoreline District Court on the number of red light camera cases they see in their courts, and what's the outcome of ticket challenges, for example. I think that would be good data to have come back at us, and since it's the responding court. Thank you.
I can reach out to the courts and see if I can put that information together for you. That's not information I've requested from them before, but I'll see what we can get from them. Regarding what you mentioned about local versus non-local people driving through our school zones, this is actually, it speaks back to a question Mayor Herbig asked earlier on in the process, and I did find an answer to that, or at least some indications from our neighboring town, Lake Forest Park. In 2019, about 10% of their violations were issued to Lake Forest Park residents. I would expect ours to be similar or less to that, because our roads where we're looking at implementing these have a higher regional mixing than the roads where Lake Forest Park has implemented them. So I would expect us to be at 10% or lower for the share of tickets that are going to Kenmore residents. I know that wasn't your question, but I wanted to speak on it.
Agreed. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments before we open up a public hearing? Okay, I'd like to declare the public hearing open. If anybody wishes to be heard, they should use the raise hand function, and you'll be promoted. And how much time are we giving them, Madam Clerk?
Since this is a public hearing, they're allotted up to 5 minutes each.
Okay.
I do see one hand raised. CCV, we're going to allow you to talk. Hold on. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the announcement of the public hearing. It was very much appreciated. I think there was a big effort there. I support cameras for school and pedestrian safety. They can help our local police catch drivers if an accident or emergency happens. But I'm against traffic cameras run by an outside entity for profit. And yes, this was recommended to the Financial Sustainability Task Group for City for Profit. I think that on 522 to 61st, the time allowed for crossing before the left turn is allowed needs to simply be increased, thus avoiding the need for the red light camera. I think it's very important to clearly mark the school zone areas. The city needs to clearly identify entering school zones. As a driver, you only see the school zone on 73rd or on Juanita when you're up on it, or if you've already know the zones are there. Non-parents are unaware of the hours of school or where the school zones are. Out-of-town visitors or people who are not familiar with the area, it's unfair to penalize for partially marked zones, especially on Juanita, as there is no school in sight. Washington Pedestrian Facilities Handbook, the safety from US DOT PSRC states thorough use of good design with striping, colored or textured pavement, clear signage, raised crossings, refuge islands, and utilizing adult crossing guards protects the children and pedestrians. State law requires speed limit of 20 miles per hour, 300 feet in either direction of the school marked crosswalk. Perhaps having the words entering school zone painted with environmentally friendly paint just outside that, or 320 feet on the pavement, as well as signs, will calm and slow the traffic for our school zones. Visibility of signage or pedestrians with utility poles, trees, mailboxes, not hiding them or the signage is another issue. For the safety of the children, more needs to be done. The one area that is clearly marked around here as a school zone is on 73rd at Lockwood Elementary in Bothell, which has speed bumps, raised crossing with yellow paint, and sign usage, as well as crossing guards with flags on duty. All school zones should be clearly identifiable to all. It is in public interest that all pedestrian safety design specifications should be attempted and exhausted prior to seeking penalties of our residents and visitors by an outside camera source that can put pressure and unjustly ticket in an attempt to generate income for their company or for our city. Please consider safety design for our students, pedestrians, and in public interest. Vote nay against adopting automatic traffic camera enforcement in Kenmore. Thank you for consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Valenzuela. We see you, Ms. Mooney. Go ahead.
Hi, council and staff. I have not researched this, so I'm just coming in because it's our one chance to give some comments during public hearing. I believe what I heard has to do with 61st and Bothell Way, which I drive all the time. And I believe what I'm hearing is just not quite enough. So I appreciate the data that the gentleman was giving. I would also appreciate the citizens, in addition to, I know David Baker asked to have the data. I think that would be wonderful for the citizens to have access to as well before making any final decisions. But my personal opinion about 61st and Bothell Way, when I compare going down 61st, south on 61st, and often I'll take a left or a right, east or west, I often see as I go through Lake Forest Park that people are more prudent about stopping before the red light turns red. And that is because they have a traffic, photo contraption there. I have seen so many cars in Kenmore speeding through, whether it's middle of the night or, whenever, but just, it is such a dangerous crossing on occasion for people that I'm sure probably don't even live in Kenmore. So what I'm wondering is whether there might be an opportunity to assess what's actually happening prior to implementing a camera that, causes a fine to go forth to citizens that are passing through Kenmore. Because I think if you had the data to see how many times there are people just whizzing through at high speeds at 61st and Bothell Way and at 68th and Bothell Way, and that that would be another factor that I would like to include in making our city safer. So I guess it's just that I'd appreciate getting more data, and I'm not against, I really respect Stacey Valenzuela, but I am not against fining people with cameras. I think it's a great way when you can't have eyes every place. And so, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mooney. Mayor Herbig, I see no additional hands.
Is there anybody else who wishes to be heard? Anybody else wishing to be heard? Seeing none, I am closing the public hearing. And at 9:07, we're finally getting to the business agenda. Item A, Initiative and Referendum Powers Resolution 22-375, presented by Policy Analyst Garrett Oppenheim.
He's
Mr.
on his
Oppenheim?
way.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and honorable members of the council. I am here tonight to present the resolution declaring the City Council's intent to adopt the powers of initiative and referendum, provide for publication of the resolution, and provide notice that upon the expiration of the 90th day from but excluding the date of first publication, if no timely and sufficient referendum is filed pursuant to law, the intent expressed in the resolution to be affected by an ordinance that the City Council will adopt. I believe that you all should have a copy of it.
Yes, we do. Do you have a presentation, or are we just here for questions? How would you like to structure this?
I do not have a presentation prepared for tonight.
Okay. So then I will open it up for questions or comments. Council member File.
No questions or comments, but I'm ready to make a motion.
Let's just really quickly see if people have questions or comments before we get to that. That will come soon enough. Do we have any other comments, questions, thoughts? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Councilmember File.
Thank you. At this time, it's my extreme honor to recommend that we adopt by resolution item number 22-375 on initiative and referendum powers. And I believe this is a really important issue to ensuring our democracy and citizen participation.
Before you speak to the issue, there has to be a second, Councilmember File. And
I have a second.
Okay. And just to clarify the motion, I want to read out what staff has here so that we're clear on exactly what is before us. It's a motion to approve 22-375, declaring the city council's intent to adopt for the city the powers of initiative and referendum, providing for publication of the resolution, providing notice that upon the expiration of the 90th day from, but excluding the date of first publication of the resolution, if no timely and sufficient referendum petition is filed pursuant to law, the intent expressed in this resolution shall be affected by an ordinance adopting the powers of initiative and referendum. Is that the motion that you were making there, Councilmember File?
That's the brunt of the motion. Yes, thank you.
Just wanted to make sure that we're all clear on exactly what was before us. Discussion, Councilmember File.
No discussion.
Does anybody else have something to say before we move to a vote? Councilmember Marshall.
So the initiative power, of course, like any other of our systems, can be manipulated, can be utilized to factional purposes. But I think the power is going to have to reside in the citizenry, and they're going to bear, all of us are going to bear the repercussions if we don't participate in an initiative that's driven on by a particularly energized and yet unrepresentative smaller faction or otherwise. I think we're going to bear the responsibility. So I think it's the, within the people's power, and I do think we should grant it.
Anybody else want to speak? Councilmember Shrubnik?
Yeah, I seconded the motion. I'm obviously in favor of it, and it's a mechanism for people to have a direct voice. I do hope that people will be thoughtful, and I trust that they will. Many of the statewide initiatives end up in the courts, and that's expensive. And detracts from other work. So not to dissuade people from using the initiative power, but just to be thoughtful, and hopefully we won't have lots of litigation, and they will go smoothly, and we will have great voice and great initiatives. Thanks.
Councilmember File and then Deputy Mayor O'Kane.
Thank you. So, local initiatives and referendum powers follow a very narrow scope. And of course, abusing of these powers is very difficult to do at the local level. Any action that didn't meet the letter of the law would be thrown out and wouldn't be able to move forward. So that being said, I feel comfortable, confident, and safe moving forward. We don't see a lot of abuses of these powers and issues locally, and they're utilized usually in the best for the community. So for those reasons, I support this issue.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane.
I just want to acknowledge our community for bringing this forward. We had some very strong advocates. I want to directly acknowledge John Culver for his strong advocacy for this. I believe from the beginning, he was one of the initiators of this. But I want to say this is an example of our community's voices mattering. Someone identified that we didn't have this, and it's something that we value. And I'm thankful that we are voting on this today. And I just wanted to call attention to the importance of our community voices and what we can do when we hear them. So thank you.
Any further discussion? Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Thank you, Mayor Herbig. Councilmember Baker. I'm sorry, you're muted, Councilmember Baker.
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Yes.
Councilmember File.
Yes.
Councilmember Kugler.
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane.
Yes.
Mayor Herbig.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Next on the agenda is a Rhododendron Park Boathouse fundraising quarterly update presented by Rob Sayer Mccord, City Project Manager, and Nell Aleo, Director of Communications of the George Pocock Rowing Foundation.
Mayor Herbig, I wanted to let you know that in place of Rob Mccord is Debbie Bent.
That is perfectly acceptable. Ms. Bent.
Thank you very much. So we're here this evening to give a brief update on the fundraising efforts for the Rhododendron Park Boat Shed. The committee were here in September as an update and committed to come back and give quarterly reports. If you may recall, there was a $560,000 shortfall, and that is the responsibility of the fundraising committee. So I'd now like to turn it over to Nell with the Pocock Foundation. And I believe Patrick is here as well. So I will turn it over to them if that's okay with you.
Thank you, Debbie, and good evening, everybody. I'm Nell Aiello with the George Pocock Rowing Foundation, the Director of Communications and Development. I'm sorry that my background screen, we're trying out a new virtual screen, so this is fun. The last time we met, we talked about the plan for the fundraising committee, and since that time, we have been able to solicit for a fundraising committee and a group of people. So we spent the end of the year reaching out and trying to pull in community members to participate in the fundraising committee. And we had our first meeting on January 13th, so just over a week ago. And we were pleased to find quite a few people. We were able to bring in representatives from the school district, different schools, and the Kenmore Rowing Club. So we feel that we're at least getting people from different organizations to participate in the committee. And we were very pleased to identify a person on the committee who has grant writing background, as well as some pretty serious fundraising and large donor experience. So very, very positive, those people who we were able to bring in. So we're going to continue to beef up that committee and bring in as many more people as we can to help with the fundraising efforts. We have been strategizing in the meantime, and we have a next meeting set for February 3rd. So the first meeting was really as a goal just to bring in those committee members and bring them up to speed on what we're aiming to do with the fundraising and the goal. And then we'll be putting tasks, delegating tasks for the next meeting so that we can start to really aggressively fundraise for this need, for the deficit. So we feel pretty optimistic. We're happy and positive that we got so many people involved already, and we'll continue to add more and look for different ways to bring in funds as we move forward. Patrick, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, thanks, Nell. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, I'd just like to add a little bit of detail about sort of the creation of our donor base and how that relates to the use of the facility. So in the fall of 2022, or the fall of 2021, just a very positive experience for the users. The high school teams had a strong season competitively, which sort of developed their team and their long-term commitment to the rowing program. The Kenmore Rowing Club made a very significant staff hire, which was very significant in that it kind of illustrates their commitment and their ability to increase publicly accessible programming in 2022. So yeah, I think these experiences, very positive. They add to interest, they add to excitement for future use. In 2022, we expect 205 unique youth users of the facility and 200 unique adult users of the facility. So I think in the big picture of this project, I believe this high level of use in such a short period of time, honestly, I think it validates the many decisions and that this body has advocated for the facility over the past 5 years. So obviously on behalf of all those users, we're certainly continue to be very grateful for your advocacy and support over this time. So obviously how this relates to our donor base, those are the people that we're going to be relying on. That's the Kenmore Rowing Club community, the Kenmore Rowing community that we'll rely on to be part of these committees that Nell is talking about, and to really do the lifting and make the community contribution to the financial commitment to construction of the facility. So that's where we are. So thank you for your time this evening.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Hello, thank you for your work, both of you. I know you're working hard to make this work and get the fundraising piece going. It's been difficult during COVID. I understand that. I'm curious whether you've thought about, I think of the St. Ed's play, well, maybe neither of you know about it, but how the St. Edward's Playground Project worked with donors to have kind of lasting footprints, so to speak, with, bricks that had names and, various ways that donors could see themselves reflected in the project. And I'm just curious whether you're considering those kinds of things.
Yeah, in fact, we do boat naming a lot of the time with boats. So that's one way that people like to see that they're being reflected in the community, and often that comes with a donation of sorts. And Patrick, you can probably speak more to this, but we do have those bricks that you're kind of mentioning, Deborah, at the Pocock Rowing Center facility. So certainly something that's a terrific idea. Certainly we're in the process of strategizing, brainstorming, putting together the many ways that we can bring in funds, some of which will be passive, some of which will be aggressive, but certainly love ideas like that. So thank you.
Yeah, I think just might add, obviously, if there's any input or if there's any hesitancy to have, so kind of, again, very much out of our element on, private names and public facilities and stuff like that. So we can certainly use any help or guidance on making sure that we don't step out of our lanes or out of our boundaries on something like that. But it is a very tried and true method boathouses across the country of recognizing donors, in particular for facility improvements or facility creations. Yeah.
Councilmember File.
Thank you. Rowing is a very popular sport in Kenmore and amongst our surrounding community. So this is a wonderful thing for Kenmore and our surrounding community. And as a destination place for Kenmore. What I'd like to say is it's been almost 6 months since we last saw you before us. And I have a couple questions. Has there been any additional fundraising you can report that has happened over this last 6 month period of time?
I'm unaware of any that's been done. Patrick, do you know of any?
No.
Okay. And in essence, similar to Councilmember Shrubnik, St. Edward's did have a really good model of individual donor levels and standalone donors. As well as lasting memories that could be left behind, we can see today. That being said, a donation link on your social media broadcast isn't such a bad idea. I mean, that's a pretty standalone, easy one. And phone banking, every couple of weeks is tried, tested, and true. So I'm going to say the same thing to what I would say to my children is I expect you to do your part and your due diligence to hold up your end of the agreement. I certainly hope the next time you come before us that you will have something to report for that 6 month period of time that's gone by, because I know you have it in you to do it. I know you do. If you need our help, let us know how we can help you. And I'm sure we have our list of persons that we can also, throw towards reaching out with our call sheets. That being said, I know you can do this. I know you can have a reportable number amount to report towards paying back the part of the principal. And I really appreciate your honesty and integrity in coming before us tonight and sharing this. So I expect a number next time, though.
Yeah, we appreciate that, and we appreciate your honesty and belief and respect in us. We definitely hope that the next time we'll have a number to update you. I know that we had spoken last time that our goal was really to get as many people on this fundraising committee as we could. So that was goal number one. And we've established the committee. We've got some really talented people involved, which we're excited about. We've identified some people with some great fundraising experience. So that will be certainly next time we'll have a number to at least provide the minimum.
I might also add a comment about the big picture scope of the project, right? I mean, we're all, as we think about, right, rowing is a very new experience in Kenmore, and right, we see well-funded, long-term rowing programs that are funded by donations, right? They've been in existence for 20 to 30 years. Again, as we almost think about from your perspective as, publicly elected officials, right, it might be very difficult for someone who recently moved to town to instantly have a donor list and have people that believe in them and have people that understand, the power of rowing and have it impact their lives. So, again, I just want to make sure that, again, that we understand that, right, the impact and the experience is what drives the fundraising, and obviously the relationship building as well. Right. I mean, the community hasn't been together enough to, to really make these heavy lifts. So again, we're building the foundation from in the same way that we built the Boathouse, we're putting a strong foundation on it. And yeah, and we take your concerns very seriously, and we take our responsibility very seriously. So yeah.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane.
First, I just want to say I'm really so happy to hear we have 400 users already of the facility. I think that's wonderful. And I also know how important this facility is to our schools and giving access to people who don't necessarily have access to rowing. And anyway, I'm really looking forward to the future of our Kenmore row house. And then as Councilmember Shrebnick and Councilmember File brought up fundraising opportunities, I couldn't help but think of one that I think would be wonderful. There's one thing that I am thrilled about is that you are getting together a high-powered fundraising team, people with experience and access to high donors. So we have an opportunity, just a thought, planting a seed. I would love to see a fabulous auction at the Lodge or another Kenmore location, but our Lodge is a beautiful facility at St. Edward's, and I think it'd be a wonderful location for an auction. And I think we can raise a ton of money from some of the auctions I've been to. Let's get it going, and let's get the people there, get the items, and make it fun and huge. We can do this. Anyway, I just have absolute confidence in the fundraising abilities that the Pocock Foundation has and our schools. So I think we can get a great team together. I love the idea of an auction. Let's have some fun. Let's get some, I mean, gosh, I just think about the history of rowing in Washington, in the Seattle area, that we could bring to an auction, the community that's involved in rowing. The potential for fundraising is huge, and we can do this. So anyway, I just want to say I can see something great at the Lodge. So thank you for what you're doing and the commitment you've made to our community, which is nothing to shake a stick at. We asked for support from George Pocock Foundation, and you're here for us. So thank you.
Councilmember Kugler.
Nell and Patrick, thank you so much for coming tonight and providing an update. I'm wondering, are there members of all three organizations? So obviously you're representing George Pocock Rowing Foundation. Are there also members of Kenmore Rowing Club and the North Shore School District Athletic Booster Clubs still represented in the committee? Okay, great. And then I know last time we met, you had shared that the George Pocock Rowing Foundation would offer like 5 hours of fundraising support, I think on a weekly basis, which I thought was great and generous and, should help move the committee along. I'm confused about who is leading the committee. Like, is that on the Pocock Foundation, the two of you to lead it, or who is leading the committee? I guess that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, that is a great question. Ideally, we would like to identify somebody within the committee who will be leading, who is not myself or Patrick. Yet, so far, we have not identified that person. So I think as we continue to build, of course, Patrick and I are happy to lead, but We want to make sure that this is an ongoing committee and an ongoing movement for fundraising. There'll always be fundraising needs at this boathouse. Once our commitment to the city is, once we've met that commitment, there'll still be fundraising to do. So in an ideal situation, we want to set this committee up for a very long time, very long term. So we would like somebody to come forward and be the leader. But like I said, we have not identified that person yet. So in the interim, it'll be myself and Patrick will be helping. But we do have somebody on the committee who doesn't want to lead, but is very familiar with fundraising. So it'll be a huge asset for us.
Councilmember Baker.
Yes. So you have formed your committee. Are you actively making requests at this point, or is there still more groundwork to be laid?
There is still more groundwork to be laid, one of which is to set up a bank account that we can bring funds into. Because right now we have a 501c3 that is a bank account attached to the Kenmore Rowing Club. So we need to determine some of the, like you said, some of the ground level foundational elements still need to be determined. We're still somewhat in the fundraising, strategic and brainstorming session with some of the members. But by the February meeting that we have set up, there will definitely be some delegation of tasks. And some of those will include just very passive ways to bring in fundraising, like setting up a donation link that is just on the website. So it's very easy. Some of it will be Amazon Smile. So again, passive bringing in a fundraising, Kroger donation link. So when you go shopping, there is an aspect that comes back to the club, back to the boathouse. So there are some things in the works, but some of that fundamental base foundational elements do still need to take place.
So when do you anticipate active fundraising to start?
I wish I had a good answer for you. It's going to really depend a lot on what we're able to do in person. I think that once we have a list of big donors who we can potentially go to and have conversations with, that'll be a first really big step towards some of this larger donation pools. In-person events still to be determined. And those are obviously good for community building, they're good for engagement, they're good for awareness, and they're great for fundraising. So I love Melanie's idea about an auction, 100% on board with that. Whether or not we can do it in the next couple of months, we're not doing anything for our organization right now in person.
So my last question is, how many people, if you said it, I'm sorry, how many people are on the committee?
I didn't say it already. So between it's Patrick and I, and then we have 4 other committee members right now. They are all charged with sourcing for more committee members. So by the next meeting, we hope to have more. We will continue to solicit for members, and whatever you guys can do to help us to really bring in anybody who's interested in helping fundraising. We're always grateful for those contacts.
Thank you.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Sorry, I should have mentioned this earlier. I appreciate your efforts. It feels, and maybe this is by design, that this is going to be borne by the rowing programs themselves to raise the funds, and yet we have the foundation, which is expert in raising funds. And I guess I'm a little confused. For example, could this be one of the foci for the Road of the Future, your annual big fundraiser? I mean, big donors. There's lots of big donors that Bocock Foundation is connected to. So is there a reason we're not leveraging directly the mechanisms that the foundation has at their liberty?
I would say that one of the reasons that we're hoping to bring in committee members from the community is to identify large donors within the Kenmore community. The ones that we have at the foundation aren't necessarily attached to Kenmore and the public boathouse there. I would also say, we're happy to share anything within our greater community and our donor constituent base. We always have to hustle for fundraising. It doesn't just come to us, right? We're always building relationships, fostering relationships. We're always out there. It's not something that is just, we're lucky that it just flows in. It is a constant, it's a constant movement and business. So we're always happy to try any different ways to bring in donors who might be interested in this project, 100%. But obviously people who are connected to Kenmore are going to have a little bit more invested in this project.
And the foundation's commitment with both Nell's time and my time, you know, over the period of a year, it's, you know, even extended beyond a year, and you know, we expect it to continue afterwards, is yeah, a way that the foundation is supporting the Kenmore community to embrace this, engage this campaign.
Councilmember File.
Yes. Is there any reason why you haven't engaged the virtual platform for fundraising? I mean, so much of that has been happening throughout the pandemic, and it, you know, it works. So, is there any reason why you haven't yet engaged that pathway, or is it?
Can you be more specific to the virtual platform? What do you mean?
Like how we are gathering here tonight via Zoom or Teams even?
Yeah, I think the committee is going to be so helpful. There's only so much that Patrick and I can do with our time right now. You know, to be honest, we don't even have that many events at the Pocock Foundation. We have one big event, which Deborah mentioned, Road to the Future Breakfast in April, which will be virtual, and that planning takes about 5 months. So just a virtual event, you know, it seems easy to do, but it's not super easy if you want to have a very successful event. So we will be using virtual platforms once we've got this committee started and have, you know, tasks for them to take place. But for right now, we have to be a little bit conscious of it, the time that we have.
I would add that our strategy also is starting with the biggest donations first, right? And so, you know, engaging our mechanics to source grants and to source large sources of revenue, right? We kind of finish these campaigns as sort of best practices in the fundraising, at least in the rowing fundraising world that we've seen and engaged in. You know, sort of the small dollar donations are like the last, you know, that's the peak, the final phase of these large capital campaigns. I think that might answer your question specifically why you haven't seen like a GoFundMe or a link like that. So, you know, we think about, you know, right, we've you know, chatted with Rob, Sarah Mccord about the idea of right, the naming, right, the ability to name the facility and like that for a large dollar donation. So again, starting with the biggest picture first and then moving our way that way.
Sure. And you kind of hit the nail on the head. I was thinking, why hadn't there been a process of crowdsource fundraising at this point? You know, one of the simplest things that can be done. And, you know, like CrowdPack, there's a really easy one that promote you. So that being said, I think I've exhausted my scope of reach. I just hope to see something more come back next time. I know you're very capable and able of it. I just haven't seen that happen yet. And it's been 6 months, and you know, I hope to see something happen in the next 6 months. Thank you.
Councilmember Baker.
Yeah, just a comment. A big boost to the fundraising effort would be the movie, The Boys in the Boat.
Councilmember Kugler.
I realize obviously that the pandemic has thrown, you know, almost every foundation's fundraising efforts, I feel like, into the wind. It's just so difficult during this time. And I also share concerns just about us reaching this goal in a timely manner. I feel like the Pocock Foundation staff really have kind of been left holding the bag here. And I don't know what the plan was originally when this was approved, because it was before my time on council. But I feel like we have to maybe consider talking about when we're going to make a decision about the possibility of monthly or quarterly rent, or how we're going to recoup these funds. Because I mean, I want to repay that strategic opportunity fund and not continually kick this down down the curb. So just saying that I am concerned about the timeline of this.
That is the opportunity to do that. I would say we are giving POCOG and the fundraising committee a little bit of grace, as you mentioned, Councilmember Kugler, due to the pandemic. I think they're putting the foundation in place, no pun intended there, to have a strong committee to do that work, but that needs to happen first. I understand council are anxious to see some actual money coming in and to demonstrate that effort. And I think that we are lucky to have Nell and Padraig kind of lead that effort and help the committee with the strategies. They've done this before, they know what they're doing, and I think that this is going to happen. So I would say we are committed to come back for quarterly reports. And I think part of that quarterly report will be to say what activities are going on and what the next steps are, and we'll measure their progress. But there is certainly the opportunity for rent, but I think it's a little early to have that conversation at this time.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane.
And I just want to say, I want to acknowledge that the size of funds that that they are working to raise for us is substantial. I would love a high quality auction that takes 4 months, 5 months to plan. You know, the money's coming. I'm not afraid of us not getting there. I just want to say, I recognize that we will be able to raise these funds will be raised for the Kenmore Rowing Club. I mean, for the row house. But we do want updates, timing, where we're at in the process. So it will be great. But I have to say, I've been impressed with the approach that you're taking. I know we'd love it all done by now, or somewhere further down the line. But the way you're talking about fundraising impresses me. So we're on it. I mean, I see that you're on it. I see that you've got the committee started, and I have faith that we're going to get there. But I do recognize our council's concerns about where we're at in the process, but I also recognize we're in a pandemic. High quality fundraising takes time and a major commitment. So I'm looking forward to our next update, and I'm sure we're going to have some fun news at that one. So thank you.
Councilmember Fowle, this is your third time with your hand up on this topic. Could we keep this short because we've been going for a little while on this topic?
Yes, it will be. Thank you. You know, we have outstanding great partners on this project, and which is why this was a worthwhile investment for Kenmore. And you know, members of this council actually you know, betted their reputation on this project and vouched for you. Council member Shrevenick, for example. And I just, you know, you have that kind of support behind you. And I know this is possible to raise this funding. I know that it can happen. And I think that while it does take time to put together a good fundraiser, it also doesn't take too much to put together, you know, something to band-aid it, add a band-aid in between. So I just really want to encourage you to create some motion and see a forward progress on your next report. Something has to happen between now and then. So I really appreciate you coming before us. Thank you again.
All right, I'm not seeing more hands up there. I really appreciate the presentation and the update. It's very helpful. And yeah, thank you for coming tonight and for everything you're doing for the community. Item C in the business agenda, 2022 annual docket for the Planning Commission presented by Debbie Bent, Development Services Director, and Lori Anderson, Principal Planner.
Laurie's not able to join us this evening, so you're stuck with me, I'm afraid.
That's fine.
So, thank you. So we're here to talk about the Planning Commission docket, and the Planning Commission docket needs to have formal approval by the council. You were given a little preview of that in your recent retreat packet. So what is on the docket is really being driven by the state mandated update of the comprehensive plan due in 2024. So there are several items which are continuing over from last year's docket, which are the housing element and the land use element. And as part of that, implementing regulations for missing middle housing and the transit-oriented district, as well as a public workshop. So the Planning Commission are continuing their work on those efforts and would be bringing those forward to you probably in June at this point for consideration. That's when the recommendation would be coming forward. The second half of the year then would be focused on updating more elements of the comprehensive plan. The transportation element is probably the biggest one, but there are other smaller elements that would be taking on as well to finish this year. And that would include the public services element, the utilities element, and the capital facilities element. So that's what we would be taking on this year. And we would also then be incorporating results from the climate action plan as well. So that would entail the Planning Commission docket for this year. You'll also see in the agenda that there are some other items that would be brought forward for council consideration, which do not involve comprehensive plan amendments. And those would include some tree regulations and some minor code amendments, and that would be brought forward by Development Services. The traffic impact fee study and some other code revisions would be brought forward by Public Works. And also then environmental engineering would be continuing their work on the climate action plan. So those are the topics that would make up the docket. Staff is recommending that council pass a motion this evening approving the Planning Commission docket for 2022. Thank you.
Any questions or comments? I am not seeing any hands. The chair would entertain a motion then to approve the planning, the docket as presented by Ms. Bent.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any discussion? Not seeing in discussion. Would the clerk please take the roll?
Mayor Herbig,
Yes.
Mayor, Councilmember Kugler,
Yes.
Councilmember Srebnick,
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane,
Yes.
Councilmember Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember File.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bent. Next up is staff report. I believe we do have a staff report today. Mr. Carl Lindsay.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I've asked Brian Hampson to jump on and give an update on the Camp Unity proposal. Mr. Hampson, are you available?
I am, thank you. So we did receive a application for the Camp Unity homeless and tent encampment to go at the Church of the Redeemer on 181st, and we received that December of last year. So we're in the process right now of processing that permit. The Camp Unity held a public meeting last week. I think 17 people participated, and a lot more people have submitted comments today and over the weekend. So we are receiving the comments and reading through them, and we'll have a decision here shortly.
Okay. Councilmember File.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Brian Hampson, this is an issue that I really had wished I had heard about earlier before my inbox started filling up over the weekend unexpectedly. But that being said, I've learned from community members who've been writing in that there's a campaign, a leaflet campaign that's being distributed around these neighborhoods following the community event. That being said, it doesn't sound like it explains what's happening with Camp Unity at the new location. It's just that it's new to this pocket community of Kenmore, and there were some outcomes from the meeting that took place with the Redeemer. And I would think we might need a little bit more of a community forum on that, or partner together, so that we can help bridge a healthier connection to this community accepting and learning more about Camp Unity near the Redeemer. I'm sure it's going to be fine, as the last one was at North Shore Lutheran Church, or the last few times they've been there. But that being said, I have an inbox full of emails, both pro and con, and some with alarm and worry and speculation, and then others addressing this leaflet campaign. And so I just want to make sure you're aware of that, and that the city was aware that that's happening within our community. And I think we might need to address it. Thank you.
Yeah, we are aware that there was some leaflet pamphlet being circulated through the neighborhood. It's not something that the city endorsed or the Camp Unity endorsed, and I'm not exactly sure who started it and who's sending it around. What we do is we take a look at all the comments as they come in. And so as a council, if you receive a comment and you see that I'm CC'd or I'm included in the title, then that's okay. We'll make sure that the comment becomes part of the record. And if I'm not CC'd, can you please forward those to me so we can make sure to include them as part of the records, and have an opportunity to respond. Once we collect all the data and know more about the concerns and make sure that they are addressed, or if they're not, we'll bring those up. But before we actually approve anything, the information, the factual information, is going to be posted on our city's website 14 days before a decision is made. And so that will give people an opportunity to understand Camp Unity's proposal much better and more accurately.
Thank you, Mr. Brian Hampson. I really appreciate that added clarification and your recommendations. Thank you.
Any further comments, questions? Councilmember Shrubnik?
Yeah, I'm hoping maybe Brian or Rob can underscore something that I think we might have seen in writing today or yesterday about the role of council in this case. So that's one question. And I frankly look forward to responding to the folks that have emailed me. I get emails all the time about lots of different things, and I try to respond. So I'm fine with that. I do think there's some, I would agree with Councilmember File. I think there's some misperceptions about what Camp Unity is. Hopefully many of those were dispelled by today's commenters. And I think it's underscores the success of the prior Camp Unity visits to North Lake Lutheran, that, you know, we're talking about a 5-block difference in location, and the neighbors of Church of the Redeemers didn't even know about it being at North Lake Lutheran. I think that speaks to the success of a prior success of the tent village. So, but my one question is clarifying the role of council in this case.
Yes, that's a good question. Actually, the permit process itself is an administrative staff process that we will process in accordance with our ordinance. And so you as a council set that ordinance and what those measurements are for reviewing the proposal. And so we'll review those and make sure that they're adhered to from the code. When the council would get involved is if there was more than one temporary encampments proposed for the next year, then it would be up for to the city council to decide which one of those encampments would be allowed in the city through the next calendar year. And so last year, before the 2022 year, we only received one application. And so there is nothing to present to council, no decision for council to make.
Yeah, and I would just like to emphasize that I really appreciate that we went through the work a few years back of actually passing regulations around this and permitting rules around this, because these were all coming to council before, and these shouldn't be political decisions. These should be permitting decisions, and I appreciate that we took care of that work a few years ago, so this isn't a council decision going forward. And also, I would say, just sorry, I laughed when Councilmember Shrubnik pointed out that they're 5 blocks away, and they hadn't felt or didn't even realize that the camp was there previously. I live literally, it's a minute walk from where I am to where Camp Unity had been previously. And if somebody hadn't told me they were there, I wouldn't have known at all. So anyway, any further questions, comments? All right. Thank you, Mr. Hampson. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Do you have anything further?
I do not.
All right. Council member reports and comments. Council member Kugler.
I did want to just share one update. I realized after we talked about council committees that I hadn't mentioned that I'm going to continue serving on the SCA Equity Cabinet. So I just wanted to share that with all of you. I'll write to staff to see if they can update that. And other than that, I just really appreciate all of our residents coming and speaking, and especially so many who spoke up compassionately about continuing with Camp Unity. Having toured it last time they were at North Lake Lutheran, I could agree with a lot of the comments that many of the residents shared. So happy to be supporting that. That's it. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Shrubnik.
I don't have any comments other than to thank our citizens and other folks who commented tonight. We had lots of amazing comments. It did take a long time, but it was worth it.
Yes. Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you. I wanted to urge our citizens to participate with the Planning Commission in their refinements, what I understand some very significant refinements to the so-called missing middle in preservation also of single family housing. I understand that there's been significant refinement in, whereas at the beginning it was just like open up and develop the whole thing and get rid of single family zoning. Now there are some actual limitations based on distance from transit corridor, and based on infrastructure and other considerations. So there are significant considerations and refinement of that have been made. I urge our citizens, though, to keep being involved in the process. But at the same time, there are several competing bills in the legislature, some of which would override or purport to override the work our planning commission is doing, our local control. So I ask again for those listening to get involved and contact our state legislators to make sure that we're able to stand up for local control and the things that matter to us, like preserving our ecosystem and our parks and our infrastructure and provision for sidewalks, as opposed to just all out development, which is what seems to be intended. Thank you.
Councilmember Baker.
Yes, I was elected today as secretary of the nominating committee for the Association of Washington Cities. And that's about all I have.
And you were reconfirmed today, I believe, to Sound Transit, were you not?
Yeah, I believe so. Yes. I know Dow had put my name in again for reconfirmation. So second 4 years.
Congratulations. Councilmember File.
Yes, thank you. So I've attended a number of meetings with the King County Hazardous Waste Committee meeting. There was a 3-day instructional continuing ed class on undoing instructional racism that's required of Hazardous Waste Committee partners and seat holders. We had 2 meetings and also a tribal meeting since the last time we all had seen each other. There is an issue with Afghan families, refugees that are now in the Puget Sound area and within our area that have brought cookware with them that's high in lead and contributing to lead poisoning. And so there's some work to remove lead from homes and provide alternatives. So I'll share that information with our city manager so that we might be able to share that in our publication somehow. I participated in the National League of Cities Federal Committee on Human Development. I was invited to serve again on the board, and I'm very honored to do that. I met with Sheriff John Snazza of Waspic last week, and we talked about the home pharmacy lockbox program, a federal to state program he's looking to see if we can connect here with. And he brought to our attention that on our local disposal with pharmacies, while they're taking back old prescriptions, they're also taking back unused prescriptions. And there's legislation in the legislature now to try to limit the redistribution of unused medications, unopened medications. And so it might be something we want to look at participating in. I'll throw that out there for future conversation. And that's about it. Oh, one last thing. I didn't get to offer my thanks and gratitude for former Mayor Baker's long-lasting service to the city of Kenmore and the many contributions over your time and service. So I want to thank you for your dedication to Kenmore. I know that, you know, things change over time, but I'm happy you're still part of the council we serve with today. And I'm honored to serve on this council with Mayor Deputy Herbig and Mayor Herbig and Deputy Mayor O'Kane. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, I just received a text from Deputy Mayor O'Kane, who said that her laptop, which has been giving her problems all evening, has once again given her problems, but she had no comments. I just have a couple of quick updates. Over last week, I've signed on to 2 letters on behalf of the city, one in support of a grant application that the EERC, the Environmental Learning Center, is applying for, and another that Bastyr is applying for a program that they outlined at our last meeting. Just giving city support for their grant applications. And today I met with Representative Kloba and Senator Stanford, along with Shelley Helder, our lobbyist, and our city manager, to go over legislative priorities, introduce ourselves to our new delegation. Meetings went well. We are meeting with Representative Doer, I think Friday, Thursday, one of those. So we're meeting our new delegation. I think we'll be putting together plans for some sort of tour once we can get together and do that sort of thing, to really introduce them to Kenmore and what we have going on and show them off and show off Kenmore to them. So that's those are things we'll be doing after session is wrapped up. So anyway, unless there is anything further to come before us, the Kenmore City Council stands adjourned. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye. Thank you.